What is up, everybody? How are you guys doing tonight? Welcome to another episode of the Black Line Brief. I'm your host, Matthew McKim. It is Tuesday. Let me fix my screen. And all right, there's some people here. I was like, whoa, what's up? Hold on, let me click this real quick. All right. All right, cool. All right, you guys. Sorry, I had to fix my screen, make sure that everything looks good to go. There we go. Well, happy Wednesday. And like I said, welcome to another episode of the Black Line Brief. What up, Sean? How are you doing, man? I'm doing good, thank you. And if you guys can, do me a favor flavor, as you guys come in, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It's how you can help support this channel. What up, AC? I'm a little nervous about the show tonight because it's different. And anytime you try something different, you don't know how it's going to land, you know? However, the information with what I'm going to share, I've never heard such a full, complete, concise, detailed, historic telling of the state of events of why the world, why the United States, the military-industrial complex, our foreign policy, why it is the way that it is. And it means we got to go back. We got to go back to the beginning. And there's this channel out there, and I'm going to give him a shout out because it's going to be mainly his audio, but I got things I'm going to pull up. So the gentleman, his name is Jimmy Talks, and the title of the video is the Forbidden History of Zionism. All right. The thing that like stands out to me is as we get, and I don't know if this is going to take 2 episodes. I hope not. And he even says it as he's doing it. There's no imagery on his. So that's why I'm not going to be showing like his video, because it's him talking, telling this story, right? This historic timeline. And he has a video of a like video game playing, but it's got like weapons and it's like an army video. It has nothing to do with what he's telling. I think he just felt the need to put something up there, I guess. But even in the beginning, as he's like opening, he's like, this is going to be just a talking video. And you put it on while you're driving, working out, cooking, whatever. I have a lot of things I've pulled up that as he references it, like we'll look at it. So this, from start to finish, it's like an hour and a half. Usually our videos go 2 to 3 hours. So but I want to get through the whole thing. I don't think he even realizes, in my opinion, when we get to modern day, I think it's a very interesting perspective on something I hadn't thought of before as to why Philly would have taken Charlie Kirk out. And it has to do with World War II, and after the fall of Nazi Germany, a lot of intellectuals went in there to determine how it was that in such a short amount of time, this country could become such a powerful superpower, but also how did all of the country, except for the Jewish population, obviously, that was segregated in ghettos and concentration camps, okay, but how the German population could all be unified so strongly with a common goal. And when they went into, to Germany after the fall, they found key factors, what they believe led to it. And it's actually like everything that, And I don't think they're bad things, because nationalism in and of itself, I don't think is a bad thing, right? Um, if we were true isolationists where we wanted to focus on the borders and within, not a bad thing. Obviously, you know, Germany in the time of World War II had aspirations outside their borders. Well, I mean, to them, they justified it because they were, you know, reincorporating parts of Germany that used to be part of Germany. And that was their definition. Well, and then living space, obviously, Lebensraum. They wanted more room, but nonetheless, so nationalism, uh, a strong religious component. For us, it'd be Christian. And yeah, pretty much like everything that Charlie Kirk was doing without the crazy side of the movement, right? Without all that. But they decided they could never let a country become like even in its like early stages start to develop some of these aspects because their fear was that it would always lead to the next Adolf, okay, and the next Reich. And I think that's insane. I think that's insane, but I mean, I think that has, in my opinion, if Charlie was turning on his view on Philly, it was only a matter of time before he researched why JFK was probably actually assassinated, which I think had to do more with Philly and the FARA filings and making them register under FARA. Also, the fact that they stole nuclear material from us and jump-started their nuclear program so that they could have nuclear weapons. And, you know, JFK was not on board for that. He wanted us all to denuclearize. And he definitely didn't want them to get it either. And he definitely didn't want to become so deeply connected with Philly that we alienated other countries in the Middle East, other Arab countries. And he was actually building ties, JFK was building ties with Russia, with the Soviet Union, and wanted us to become closer, right? So I think it's only a matter of time. It would have been only a matter of time for Charlie Kirk to realize, and like when you take into account the Schofield Bible, there's so much about Charlie I still want to understand, because he seems to have bought into dispensationalism, which is a modern creation by, and there's no real way to say this, like Jewish Zionists and then evangelical Protestant Zionists that got on board. Because when you find out who Schofield was, who funded him, the Rothschilds, Oxford Press, to create this Bible that was going to create this this myth of Judeo-Christian values, that we had so many things in common and we have this unified goal, is kind of crazy. And it seems that, but I mean, I think all of us, at least within the Protestant, community, denominations, until the last few years, even I still believed that. It was only, I would say 2023, but really 24 to 25, when our eyes began to open on all of this. Maybe some of you already knew some of these things. I mean, we already questioned 9/11, right? BB and weapons of mass destruction, and why were we there, and what were we doing, and all of that, right? The project for a new American century. But I don't know if Charlie was fully aware of who he was really in bed with. And if he was beginning to pull take the covers off his eyes on some of these things, it was only a matter of time for him to learn other things. And a Charlie Kirk in charge of a pro-American nationalist Christian movement posed a significant existential threat to Philly. It did. It did. And I didn't really think of it that way. But like Charlie Kirk, unchecked, allowed to fully divorce himself from Zionism and Philly, only a matter of time would have realized what we all now realize, that Bibi and Philly are bad, not good, and they don't have our best interests at heart. And you will hear that in this episode. All right. So I don't want to take too much time. I already kind of said a lot of the things that are going to be brought up, but let's get into it. Love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. Hopefully you guys are in for it. If not, I'll check this off as, you know, well, plus here's the other thing, guys. This thing opened my eyes to things I already knew, but now things I know so much more in deep, right? Like I can't even show you how many freaking windows I have up here of all these different things that I've already listened to this video 3 times. This will be my 4th time, and checked everything this gentleman said, much of which I already knew, but and I'm sure much of which you guys will already know. So some of this will be like rehashing things you know, but there's some things in here that really just like blew my mind. But yeah, I can chalk this up as a learning experience, but hopefully we're all in this together. And this was something that I thought it meant a lot to me. It did a lot to me personally for understanding the current situation, what's happening with Trump, what's happening in Iran, what happened to Charlie, what happened to our country. And it's something that I wanted to share with you. So it's out of the goodness of my heart that I wanted to help bring some of this information to you guys. And so I hope it's received in that fashion. Okay. All right. Let's get into it. And so just giving a shout out to this gentleman, Jimmy Talks is his channel. And the video is The Forbidden History of Zionism. All right. But I got to make it small and go away because it starts playing a video of video games of people, you know, war things. I can't show that. Ready?
We're 1 minute in, so let's get into it. Let us discuss Zionism, because a lot of the so-called patriots, the news channel,
and I do want, I don't know, one of my mods, whoever's here, or just in the chat, give me a thumbs up that you can hear the audio of him speaking. Okay.
These sorts of guys, they're absolutely terrified of this. Let's get into to put it frankly, the parasitic relationship. You see, a lot of people are confused about this. They'll ask me, Jimmy, why does the most powerful country in the world, the U.S., seemingly subordinate its entire foreign policy to the interest of a tiny patch of land in the Middle East, aka Israel? So the answer I hear commonly is money. But while that is true, it's not just money. That's just one facet of it. It's basically a blend between specific Jewish historical perspective, their theology, and a manufactured movement, aka Christian Zionism, that has been carefully curated for over a century now. This is nothing new. This stuff has been going on for a while. But before we get to the modern era, we have to dismantle this now. The biggest linguistic lie of the 20th century. We have to kill the term Judeo-Christian before we even get into the history. This term is a modern fabrication. It's actually a political slogan invented during the Cold War, around there, to create a synthetic, meaning it's not real, unity that does not exist historically or theologically with Christianity. So the reality is that Christianity did not merge with Judaism. That doesn't even make sense. It emerged from it and then was violently rejected by it. The moment Christ was rejected by the Sanhedrin, 2 distinct and opposing forces were created. One accepted Christ, the other rejected it. So for 2,000 years, these 2 groups have not been partners, they have been theological opposites. Now, to understand this feud, let's go all the way back to the Roman Empire. We're going to, let's say it's around 70 AD and the Arch of Titus. So the Romans didn't like the Jews. The Jews did not like.
And think about that, ladies and gentlemen, that um, and I'm going to play a video of where BB says we are the new Rome. Okay. And they do not forget what happened, right? Literally, the temple within the Jewish faith, it is the center of the universe. Okay. Not just the center of Judaism, it is the center of the universe. It is where God's spirit comes down and abides and abodes with them. Okay. And it is the focal point of their ability to practice their religion in full. And without the temple, they have not been able to actually practice their religion. Okay. And that's why the Chabad organization, which I'll show you later, is literally established to ensure, and it ties into all this and everything that's happening in Iran right now, that the third temple is rebuilt. The third temple has to be rebuilt, and Rome and the West has to be destroyed, and all of the spoils that were stolen from the second temple have to be brought back and put back in the temple. And since the Al-Aqsa Mosque is there, we'll get into that. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I actually think that Bibi thinks he's going to be the Messiah, right? Because it's a political, religious / military figure that is what was muted. What's muted? Wait. Hold on. You guys couldn't hear it when I was showing the pictures. You lost the sound. Oh, cool. Oh, I know what happened. Great. Pictures only, no sound. All right. So I'm not even going to be able to do that. All right. I'll have to pause it. All right. No sound. I didn't see that. Dynamite. How far back did it go? Lost the sound. No sound. Way back. Son of a gun. Right there. Sean said facts. Renita. Interesting stuff, Matt. Good work. No audio. Right there. Jay's the first one to get it. TNT Queen and the best Heather. All right. All right. All right. All right. Okay. All he was saying was that, and I can rewind it a bit, but let me thank you, by the way, Nina Darling. Thank you for everyone telling me that I lost the sound. That's weird. Let's see. Let me pull this back up. All right, let me back it up a smidge. Probably, let's see. Hold on.
Oh, there. the carving of all of that stuff is still there.
Yeah.
So that moment kind of birthed a grudge that the Jews had.
Or wait, it was when he
Dude,
started.
let's go all the way back
Hold on.
to the Roman Empire. We're going to, let's say it's around 70 AD, Second Temple. That is a big Jewish icon. He sacked the city, the meaning he completely destroyed it. He stole everything from it. He expelled all of the Jewish people, and then he took all of their stuff, the spoils of war, basically their most prized possessions. He took a big menorah that they had. He had the table of showbread. And
all right, so what I'll have to do is I'll have to pause it when I see and I see Mystic. She sent me a bunch, like no sound probably. We hear you, but not the pictures. What do you mean? You'll need to replay the last video. There was no audio with that video. What video? No, those are pictures that I put together. So like this video that I have, it's all audio. It's all audio. And so what I did was like all the things that he's talking about, I like found the information and different things to give visuals to the audio. However, the moment I click off the audio and click to a different tab, it makes that audio go away. And that's what I just figured out in real time. Yeah, the pictures were showing there was no audio. Got it. Yeah, because they're two different things. And I thought I would be able to do it. And because I can still hear it in here. That's what's so hard is that like I thought because I could still hear it, you guys would be able to still hear it. So I apologize for that, right? Yeah, the pictures showed, right? When I started showing the pictures of like the sacking of Rome and all of the like the menorah, the showbread, the table for the showbread, the golden trumpets, and then it showed the Arch of Titus and all that. That was just to go along with the audio. So I backed up the audio. I'll start it now. And then as I want to show you things, I'll just pause the audio, show you what I want to show you, and then go back. All right.
And the silver trumpets, these are very important to Judaism. So you can go to Rome today and you can see the Arch of Titus. It's in Italy. You can go see it today. It's still there. The carving of all of that stuff is still there. So that moment kind of birthed a grudge that the Jews had against the West, because really the Romans started Western civilization. That lasted for till now, really. So in the eyes of,
and do you guys know who BB says the new Rome is? So think about this, you guys. Okay, if the West, because the West is a product of Rome. After Rome fell, it turned into the Catholic Church, and then we are all here in America, and the West in general are a product of Rome and the Catholic Church. Okay, and none of us are Jewish, so none of us we're outsiders. To be honest, okay, and in fact, we're kind of an enemy. And for most of the West until recent years was Christian. Only when the left liberals got involved and pushed secularism as a new religion did that really start to change. And however, a lot of Jewish Zionists and donors were the cause of that. And Charlie even said that himself. We're at fault for a lot of these pro-leftist ideologies that pushed this secularism on our society. And if you can destroy the West from within, you got to make the country not nationalistic. You have to make the country not unified. You have to diversify it by bringing in a bunch of foreign individuals, immigrants that aren't going to assimilate and become part of the culture, but they want to bring their culture and create their culture here in the United States. And so, man, I got off topic. Holy smokes. I hate it when that happens. All right, let me show you what BB says about the West, right? So the West are the reason, and Rome, okay, is the reason why the Second Temple was destroyed and Jerusalem was sacked. Why the Jewish diaspora was even created and started in the first place. Why then the Jews for the next, I don't know how many years, were eventually expelled from 109 separate countries. Okay. And that the anger, the resentment from all of that it is directed at the West. And think of like European countries right now, like the same things that are happening here, they're happening in the UK, they're happening in Europe, they're happening in Australia. It's happening across the world to the West. The West is under attack. Christian, Catholic, different denominations within Christianity, right? And the different, parts of the British crown, offshoots are still pretty much Christian at their base. They were at least a while ago before secularism started to destroy them as well. Those are under attack. Okay. And they're under attack from Philly, and they need to destroy us in order for them to rise up. Okay. So let's listen to Bibi.
This is a different time. Rome and Jerusalem clashed over values with a great tragedy for the Jewish people. But the new Rome, the United States, views itself as a new Jerusalem. We visited the original city on the hill. We visited the hill. There is no greater friendship than the one between Israel and the United States.
That's a lie. So his first statement is 100% true, that he views the United States as the new Rome. All right. Now let's go here. Let's listen to this. So he views the United States as the new Rome. Okay.
We want to know what you're reading now.
What I'm reading?
Yeah.
It's a book by a historian named Barry Strauss. It's called The Jews Against Rome. The Jews Against Rome.
What made you pick it up?
Well, we lost that one. I think we have to win the next one.
They lost the first fight with Rome, but they have to win the next one. All right. Let me take this off the screen because that has a thing on it that I can't. All right, let's continue here.
Jewish history, the West is Rome. Rome is the West. The West is the entity that destroyed their home, basically, and sent them into exile. That is how they view it. And when the Roman Empire fell, who took the place of Rome afterwards? That would be the Catholic Church. The church then became the West. And so the feud transferred from the Romans and Caesar and all that to the popes and the Catholic Church. There is a deep prevailing belief within certain sects of Judaism that the Vatican is still hoarding the treasures of all the stuff that the Romans stole from them, basically. They believe that the menorah and all of the holy vessels and items are all still sitting in a vault beneath St. Peter's Basilica. And that is the Vatican. That's where the Pope stays. But the point of this, the real kicker, is that when they believe that when their Messiah arrives, who will be a political and military ruler in the eyes of Judaism, he will destroy Rome, or in other words, the West. He will crush the Catholic Church, and he will take those treasures back to Jerusalem to inaugurate their world dominion, aka they own the world. But it doesn't just end with Rome. So after the diaspora, aka they were moving around, the Jews fled into Europe afterwards. And this is where their economy and banking and finance sector, part of Judaism that we always hear, it's the bankers or whatever. This is where this all started. So for centuries in Europe, the Jews lived in segregated communities. They were basically a nation within a nation. In many European countries, they simply just had no citizenship rights.
True.
They were forbidden from owning land. They were forbidden from starting groups, joining guilds. They were forbidden from participating in normal agricultural life.
And yeah, that's the other thing, you guys. So you need to look up Ashkenazi Jews and the difference between Ashkenazi Jews, right? And Sephardic Jews and Bibi, and the majority of the political elite that have been, prime ministers, presidents, and things like that of Philly. They have their names changed to sound more oh my gosh, of course. Now all I can think of is Sephardic and Ashkenazi, but no, oh my goodness, I can't even think of it right now. Anyways, yes, that's his real last name. They changed his last name. Okay. 100%. Let's see. We can't see what you're sharing. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can't share it. It's all audio. Yes, you hear it. I know. There is, like, let's see if I could show you without. No, it's got. I explained that in the beginning. Did you miss that part, Renita? It's only audio. This gentleman's only doing audio on his video. He's playing pictures, or he's playing a video of a video game just to have pictures on the screen, but it's like a military video game with weapons and guns and all that. I can't show that. The point of this, and he even said it in the beginning, he's like, this is just going to be the information. Okay. And the information is the important part. And but I have things pulled up that I'm going to show you. And that's why, like, I pulled up the BB thing. You guys heard that, correct? Like BB, like him talking about the book he was reading about Rome, and Jews versus Rome against Rome, and that they lost the first battle against Rome. They're not going to lose the second battle. And before that, I showed the video with him and Pompeo where he said, we're the new Rome. Okay, so put those together. We're the new Rome. They're not going to lose the next battle with Rome. Okay, he's talking about us. All right, let's continue.
Of the nations that they lived in. They were essentially just second-class citizens. So this forced them into finance. It forced them to survive on basically anything that they could do. And crucially, though, it led them into the one industry that Christians at the time, and not really anymore, but at the time, they considered.
All right, so for those of you that didn't know, I can't even show it because it has a freaking. Oh, I can show this part. Let's see. Nope, it has a. The guy speaking his name is Jimmy Talks. That's the name of his YouTube channel, Jimmy Talks. And the name of the video is The Forbidden History of Zionism. Okay. But like I said, it's just him talking and video games playing the whole time.
Dirty and sinful. And this was money changing, or in other words, usury. So in medieval Christendom, charging interest on loans was considered a sin. The church did not want the Christians to do that. But Jewish law allowed them to charge interest to non-Jews.
To us.
So while the European aristocrats in all of our countries were fighting wars and the peasantry was farming the land, the Jewish communities became the money changers. This is how they started accumulating wealth over time. This took a very long time. They became.
And just think about like the historical precedent of that, when like Jesus went into the temple and flipped over the money changers and was like, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing to my father's house? Right. And so for Christians, being like changing of money and lending money, usury at interest, was not something Christians did for a very long time. And it was like the one kind of field that was open for Jews to do. And so they did it. Right. And then they learned how to do certain tricks. And like they even within the Talmud, which is like this oral, the Talmud, there's the Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmud. It talks about them, how they treat fellow Jews and how they treat non-Jews, us. Right. And they can lend money to one another, no interest. Actually, it's like a prescription. You do lend to one another, no interest. You lend to us, non-Jews, goy, at interest. Okay.
The tax farmers, and they became the bankers slowly over time. And it was viewed as a lowly job, or a job for outcasts, but it was a job that controlled the flow of capital. They saved every single penny that they were able to, and they built networks of credit that spanned across borders. And this is exactly where the Rothschilds came from. Now enter Meyer Amschel Rothschild. He did not just appear out of nowhere, out of thin air. Suddenly this guy has a bunch of money. No, this has been in the makings for quite some time, as we discussed. So he came from Frankfurt, Germany. He came from the ghettos. He came from a not so nice area of the city. And he came from generations of money changers who learned how to leverage debt against the ruling class. But this financial power came at a social cost, as we
Right. And so those of you that here, this is, oh, that's my face. Hold on. There we go. Meyer, Amschel, Rothschild, right? Frankfurt, Germany. Okay. The Red Shields, Rothschilds. All right. And he ended up having, I think it's 4 or 5 sons that he sent to different European countries back in the day to establish banking houses in each one. And right, so to the UK, France, the most Italy, some other ones. I forget the other countries that they went to, but the descendants that we know of as the Rothschilds are the French ones, right? They became the most powerful. They're the only ones because of inbreeding. I think it's the ones in Italy, kind of it died out. And really the ones in the other countries slowly dwindled. And the real ones that are left are the French ones that also have deep ties to the British family. There's a lot of intermarrying that's going on. And so it gets really the blood gets muddy down this far down the line. But yeah, so I mean, they made a lot of their money by, lending money to both sides of the war, right? And if you just go back in history, you learn, right? That's actually what happened with Napoleon and things like that. All right, let's continue.
said that Christian Europeans did not like this stuff at all. The European nations knew that this group was not one of them. They saw the accumulation of wealth by a hostile, insular elite as a threat to their own survival.
And I'll stop it as I get this. Matt bringing the heat. I think Judaism birthed Islam to combat Christianity. Yeah, strength in numbers. From inception, Christianity was the enemy for them. Yes. They added a counterfeit Jesus and Mary to be more appealing, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting to look at. Yeah, I mean, maybe I should do a whole nother video on that. That's another rabbit hole. I like what you're saying. I'll put it that way without trying to give too much of what I think. But I think I should devote a whole nother episode to just that comment. All right, let's continue. Or wait, I want to show this real quick. Let's go here, because he's about to talk about this in a second. So let me pull this up here.
In 1290, all Jews were kicked out of England. In 1306, they were expelled from France. In 1430, exiled from Germany, followed by Spain and Portugal. They were also driven out of Russia, boycotted in Italy, and time after time, tossed out of every major European city. But why? At a time when Christians were studying physics, art, and astronomy, the Muslims focused on maths, medicine, and poetry. But the Jewish community, from cousins and uncles.
All right, I didn't see the rest of the part. The main part that I wanted to share was them being expelled out of 109 separate countries, which is about to come up right now.
Bible. And this is the fact that destroys the Judeo-Christian myth once and for all. The 109 expulsions. Throughout history, Jewish communities have been expelled from 109 Christian countries from around the 1200s to around the 1800s, I believe, maybe the 1700s. So if Judeo-Christian values were real and Jews and Christians were always warring with each other and getting kicked out of countries and were considered second-class citizens and had a different religion and they weren't included in things, why did Christian nations kick them out 109 times? Why was there constant friction for 2,000 years and even still to this day? The answer is because their interests were diametrically opposed. One group was building Christendom and the other was building a financial empire to survive in a world that they viewed as hostile to them.
Yep.
So Judeo-Christian is a myth. It's not real. They believe in different things. So how on earth did American Christians become the biggest supporters of a group that historically views them as the spiritual successors to Titus when this all began. Enter Christian Zionists and the Scofield Reference Bible. So, in the early 1900s, Cyrus Scofield, which is a man with a bit of a questionable background and deep connections to the.
And I don't know if you guys have heard of the Scofield Reference Bible. Some of you may have this, and he's about to explain where it came from, who funded it, the purpose of it. This is obviously just a picture of one of them, right? But the main thing is this was the first time that a Bible had this down here. Okay, this is their interpretation of the verses, of key verses. Okay, and so they did it throughout the Bible, but in key parts, this is where they spread their new Zionist dispensationalist ideology. All right. And from this, everything changed for Christian Protestant, for Christian Protestants in America. All right. Before this Bible, there wasn't Zionism, right? And there wasn't this marrying of, Zionism and Christianity in the United States.
The international elite that I kind of mentioned already, like the Rothschilds, he produced a Bible, a version of the Bible, that included notes at the bottom of the page. These notes essentially invented a theology called dispensationalism. And here is the part that they really don't want you to know. Scofield's work was published by Oxford University Press, which at the time was deeply embedded in the financial grasp of the Rothschilds.
Yep.
Crucially, it was the Rothschilds family that provided all of the financial backing for the early Zionist movement.
Yep.
They were the primary funders of the early settlements in Palestine as well.
Yep.
But money.
Yep. Let me get to this real quick. This is Always Be True. Have you read the book of Maccabees? Yes. It's in the Catholic Bible. Yes. Worth a read. Gives a perspective on things. Yes. Like October 7th. Yes. Yes. I agree. Yeah. And if those of you that maybe are Protestants, but don't know that there are books that are in the Catholic Bible, right, known as the Apocrypha, that aren't in the Protestant Bible. I've read them because I'm just, I'm fascinated by certain things in history, and the Book of Enoch also fascinated me, and that's kind of how I got into. And then there's other books as well, like from Nag Hammadi and the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a lot of Gnostic, early Christian sect books that aren't in the Bible, but are just interesting in and of themselves as well. So, all right, let's continue. Thank you for that. Yes.
It was not enough for the Zionist movement and for trying to get Palestine. They needed also a political architect. Now we have Theodore Herzl. Now, if you don't know who Theodore Herzl is, you don't understand the Middle East.
Yep.
Theodore Herzl is the father of modern political Zionism.
Yep. Here is Theodore Herzl. Okay. This is Theodore Herzl, right? These are just some photos that I found. This is just on Wikipedia. Okay. But yeah. I think this is the very first, the second Zionist Congress in Basel, right, in 1898. And that's just a photograph in 1904. The sixth Zionist Congress, seated next to him, Z. Werner, editor of the Zionist paper, and D. Welt. Yep. This is in Vienna, Herzl's funeral in Vienna. And yep, where Herzl's grave in Dobling Cemetery in Vienna. That's crazy. I've been to Vienna. I can't believe I didn't know this back then. That's nuts. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I had a bunch of friends that were over here when I was in the Marine Corps that invited me to go when I got out. And so I spent 3-5 months in Vienna, in Czech, in UK. I went to Italy and Rome and stuff like that, and other places. It was really cool. But I didn't know all this part. I wish I would have known. I would have gone and seen some of this. All right.
The late 1800s, around there, I think it was 1879. It was in the 1870s. He wrote a book called Der Judenstaat,
Yes.
which means the Jewish state. Herzl was not just a dreamer or somebody who made this book just to kind of make it and like, hey, this is what I envision as perfect. He was a political operative. He argued that the Jewish question was not a religious one, but a political one.
Political one.
He believed that the Jews could never assimilate into Europe, given they were kicked out of 109 countries,
True.
and that they needed to be a separate power if they were to ever thrive. And here is a fact that destroys the biblical prophecy narrative that dispensationalism has pushed for quite some time now.
What is it?
Theodor Herzl and the early Zionists didn't even care if the state was in Palestine originally.
What?
They considered making a Jewish state in Uganda.
Yeah, Uganda.
They also considered Argentina.
Yeah.
They were willing to take land anywhere.
Anywhere.
This proves it wasn't about God's promise initially.
So when they spout to you Genesis 6 and other scriptures about, from Euphrates to wherever God's blessed us, and that's, this is our land, and we're fulfilling, Old Testament prophecy and God's promise to Abraham, and that's what this is about. No, he's going to go into it. It's morphed into that now, but early on, right? Because they were liberal, right? Political. They weren't religious, conservative Jews, right? They were liberal, political. They wanted a physical, home base for them to do whatever they want, right? And so Uganda and Argentina were two proposed places that they were going to buy, right? And the Rothschilds ends up buying the plot of land from the British government of Palestine, which they give it to them. And we get into the Balfour Declaration, which is coming up in a minute, and I'll show you some documents, but let's continue.
It was actually about securing a base of operations.
Yes.
So the fact that they're saying that, oh, Israel of 1948, that is the Israel that the Bible talks about, that's simply just not true, especially considering the fact that the Schofield Bible was pushed by the Rothschilds.
Yes.
Who are Jewish.
Yes.
So this was actually just a colonial project, pure and simple.
Yep.
They only settled on Palestine because they knew it was the only way to mobilize the religious masses using the Schofield Bible.
Correct.
So Herzl organized the first Zionist Congress around the late 1800s. I don't remember which time exactly, but he created the institutions like the World Zionist Organization and the Jewish National Fund that would act as a government in exile. It was a government for a country that did not exist yet. It spoke for all of the Jewish people. He then traveled the world, lobbying all of the emperors and the sultans and the kings and everybody that was in charge, trying to secure something for a Jewish state. He understood that to make this happen, he needed the backing of a superpower. So he laid the groundwork for the lobbying infrastructure that runs Washington, D.C. to this day.
Yep.
But the real turning point for all of this and the moment that sealed the fate of the West was World War I. So fast forward to World War I, 1914 to 1918. We're going to go to 1916. In 1916...
And this is the part that's hard for me. I need to check in with you guys. He goes through the... he goes through the history of why we really got involved actually in World War I and World War II, and how we got involved. Not the history that we've all learned. And I'm sure some of you have probably learned alternative histories to World War I and World War II. Right. We all know about the sinking of the Lusitania, right? We also know Pearl Harbor. And I'm sure you know some alternative narratives out there from the official stories that, we were attacked by, German U-boats, and then, we were attacked by Japan, and that's why we got involved. There's a lot more to the story, and I think it's important. So I want to make sure you guys hear this. Hopefully you guys are down for it. Yep. Henry Ford. Yeah. You have I.G. Farben, right? You have Prescott Bush, where it's all going to be covered. It's super interesting. Hopefully you guys are down for it.
Germany was winning the war. in World War I. Britain was desperate. They were like, hey, we need to win this war somehow. And the Zionists knew this. So the Zionist leadership in London went to the British War Cabinet in the UK, and they made them a deal. They said, basically, we can bring the United States into this war on your side. We have the influence over the media, we have the finance, and we have the political advisors in Washington to drag America into this fight. And in exchange, you give us Palestine. That was the quid pro quo. That was the deal. America was then dragged into a European meat grinder, sacrificing about 100,000 American soldiers.
Yep.
Not really for American interests, but as the payment for a deed of land in the Middle East for the Zionists.
Yep.
This then came into fruition in 1917 when Arthur Balfour sent a letter to Lord Walter Rothschild.
And let's look at that, right? So that's right here. Oh my goodness. Of course. Can you guys still hear me right now? Hold on. I don't know what happened. Thumbs up real quick. Can you guys hear me? Yes, no, maybe. So, yes, they were partners. Yes, they were. All right. Well, I'm going to have to hit refresh. Please don't go anywhere. It won't take a second. It'll take a second, but only a second. So just hold on. All right. How long is it black? It's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. You guys all still here? Why is it still black on there? All right. Dang, that sucks. Okay, I didn't lose anyone that many. Hopefully it's not because of what we're covering, but we shall see. Let me go here. All right, let me add it back to the screen real quick, okay? We're talking about the Balfour Declaration. All right. Share this tab. All right, YouTube, can you just behave tonight, please? All right, so here we have, this is from, I forget which Rothschild, Lord something de Rothschild, right? Dear Mr. Balfour, I don't know, do you guys want me to read it? At last, I'm able to send you the formula you asked me for. If His Majesty's government will send me a message on the lines of this formula, if they and you approve of it, I will hand it on to Zionist Federation and also announce it at the meeting called for that purpose. I'm sorry to say our opponents have commenced their campaign by a most reprehensible maneuver, namely to, is this like in multiple disturbance, or maybe it's just the type, excite a disturbance by the something of British Jews versus foreign Jews. Yeah. All right. So anyways, all right. This is one of, let's go on to the next one. It's about the war cabinet, the Zionist movement, right? Where's the one? I think these are just clippings from that time, but the Balfour Declaration, the anti-Semitism of the present government, right? So here's Balfour's declaration, His Majesty's government. It's really small writing. I'm not going to read all that right now because he's about to, and this is the table that it was signed and, written on. And then there's this, if you guys want to pause it, you can pause it sometime and read it, but I'm going to continue on. All right. And this is in German, so I can't read that. All right. The future of Palestine. Yeah. And correspondence, Palestinian Arab delegation, Zionist organization, right? Cutting up the Middle East and handing it over. Examination of captains and lieutenants for promotion, Palestine campaign, the military history of Palestine campaign, and then back here. All right, let's go back here. Let me take this off screen here.
This letter is known as the Balfour Declaration, and it was pretty much a formal statement of policy by the British government supporting the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. But we also need to look at what was happening simultaneously as the Balfour Declaration was happening in 1917. While the Zionists were securing their state in the Middle East, they were also destroying a Christian empire in Russia. I am talking specifically about the.
I do have to say one thing right now. First of all, I actually love all you guys, for real. Like, you guys have really made certain parts of this experience the best. And certain parts of this experience of me starting the channel and just some of the ups and downs that I've already gone through, kind of probably, aside from my faith in God and my relationship with my wife and my pops, my wife's dad, without all of you guys, like everyone together, would have made it really hard. Okay. And so I appreciate all of you. And then comments like this and like Mystic and Renita and Dulcinea, I know you're not officially a mod, but like you're amazing too. Okay. But we have Bree and Glenn. I think Glenn's on vacation or something, but they're the best mods on the internet. Okay. But like, this is how good like the mods are. They'll send me things. And I just want to give a shout out to Zuzu Patel. So Matt, you're my favorite podcaster. I love your show. Your authenticity and ambition for truth are inspiring. Thanks for all you do. Peace. Thank you, Zuzu. She knows, Mystic knows that I can't. Oh, and then thank you, Jim Bear. Did the same thing. Look at that's. Oh, I forgot Jim Bear. Can't forget Jim Bear. Jim Bear, the only guy on the mod team. Thanks, Jim Bear. All right. Let's continue.
The Bolshevik Revolution and the murder of the Romanovs. You cannot separate these events. At the same exact time the Balfour Declaration was being signed, the Christian Tsar Nicholas II and his entire family were being butchered.
And I don't know if you guys have seen, there's like oh man, I have to minimize it first. Hold on. I think it's on Netflix, actually, a series on the Romanovs. Oh, I got to add that back in here. And what happened to them is super, super sad. Okay. And did you know that this dude, right, Nicholas, was cousins with the British, the King of England. And they actually look like twins, right? Let's see if I could do a side by side. Let's go. All right, let me see if I can put them side by side. Yep. How do I, let's see if it'll let me do it and make it big. There we go. All right, let me see if I can share this one. There we go. All right. Boom, right? So this is the King of England, all right? And this is Nicholas. They literally look like twins. It's nuts, all right? But from my own personal belief, all right, there's no way, all right, because the Rothschilds, the British banking families, were in bed with the Rothschilds and these Trotskyites that were part of the Bolshevik Revolution and which led to the massacre of the Romanovs. That the Windsors, before that, they weren't called the Windsors. They're actually like German, Bavarian. Always these families, like if you look back at most of the wars, right, in Europe, in the Middle Ages and during that time frame, these families were fighting with one another. Okay, they all were intermarrying, and it was all vying for power and dominance and wealth. Russia was amassing, and the Romanovs were amassing a massive empire and power, and they were the wealthiest out of all the European families. Not only that, they were the most beloved by their people. And yes, there was no perfect monarchy, around. However, they were a lot better than the rest. All right. And the European, royal family and his cousin were jealous. In my opinion, that never would have happened if it wasn't sanctioned by the British royal family, in my opinion. Okay. All right. Always be true. At some point, please type in Google, can Jews enter a church? Can Jews enter a mosque? Interesting result. Why do they dislike one another so much? Oh, let's do it right now. Let's see. All right. Under Jewish law, the halakha, entering a mosque is generally permitted, as Islam is a strictly monotheistic religion. However, entering a Christian church is generally forbidden because traditional Jewish law categorizes them as places associated with idolatry. Right, right. Because we believe that our God became man and was in flesh, and therefore we're worshiping a false idol. We're worshiping a man. And then we have like Mary and we have the cross and all of that. Right. So Orthodox and traditional views, the halakha strictly prohibits entering a church, even for non-religious purposes like architecture, weddings, or funerals. Wow. Conservative and reform views, many allow entering a church for secular reasons or major life cycle events of friends and family, but generally discourage active participation in the service. Wow. Broad consensus. Because Islam is rigorously monotheistic, Jewish authorities generally agree that entering a mosque is not a violation of Jewish law. Jews are even permitted to pray in a mosque if necessary. And there is a shared tradition of Jews and Muslims praying at shared holy sites like the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron. Wow. That was a good super chat. That was a good super chat. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, but they're friends with us. They love us. Yeah.
In a basement. And who led this revolution exactly? Who financed it? It wasn't the Russian peasants. They couldn't afford anything like that.
Nope.
It was actually, though, Wall Street bankers like Jacob Schiff, who was a heavy Zionist financer, who put millions of dollars into the Bolsheviks to topple the Christian czar. Now, for the Bolsheviks, it's very important that we look at the leadership of.
Dude, I love you guys. You guys are so cool. Yeah, Mountbatten, right? Or Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Yes, yes. So that was the name of the royal family in Britain before they renamed themselves Windsors during World War II. It was either after World War I or before World War II. It was in that time frame because that name, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, is a German monarchy name. Okay. And they changed it so that people wouldn't associate them with Germany. I don't know. When did I actually went mute? I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know that happened.
Them. There was Trotsky and Kamenev and Sverdlov, the men who tore down the churches and executed the priests and the ones who established the gulags for the communist state. They were not ethnic Russians.
Nope.
They were a hostile elite who viewed the Christian peasants with contempt. 1917 was a pincer movement. They secured their own nationalism in the Middle East with the British and the Balfour Declaration while destroying Christian nationalism in Russia.
And think about that. Why has Russia always been this, boogeyman after World War II? Before World War II, right? At the beginning, they were our allies, okay? But then the infiltration of this pro-Zionist and all these, individuals, these, characters, they're our enemy. How come it's every enemy of these individuals becomes our enemy, right? Even though like we even have more in common with Russia and the Christian part, not the communist part. But yeah, I just think it's crazy, man. All right, let's continue. Sorry.
The rise of communism and Zionism as twin forces that were reshaping the world into a pro-Jewish political interest, basically. And the Spencer movement didn't stop in 1917. It laid the groundwork for the Second World War. We're going to skip over the Versailles Treaty and Weimar Germany for a little bit. Those are kind of important, but it's not really the most important thing ever to mention for the Zionist movement.
Agreed.
So we're going to go and fast forward to the late 1930s, right before World War II, and we're going to picture ourselves in America now. So by the late 1930s in America, the Zionist leadership in America and Britain as well.
Yeah. I mean, I said that the Bolsheviks were mainly Jews. Yes. Yes. 100%. Trotsky, Lenin. Yeah, they were. And that's kind of what he said. He said they weren't ethnically Russian, right? They were a different group, right? And they were mainly Jews. Yes. And they were even initially, I think it was like Lenin and Trotsky were in New York before this revolution, and they were paid and funded by New York Jewish banking magnates and then sent over there.
They were itching to bring the United States into the war against Germany. Nazi Germany was starting to get very big at this time. They had been building up themselves for quite some time now. Of course, the Jews in Europe, especially Germany, were very against the National Socialist government. There was even headlines in the British newspaper called the Daily Express that pretty much said Judea declares war on Germany. The Jewish were obviously not fans of the National Socialists. So the Zionist movement knew that they couldn't just fight Germany head on, and they knew that they needed something more powerful. So they knew that they needed the American military, for example, to crush the German state. But herein lies the problem with that. The Americans, before World War II happened, they didn't even want to fight.
No.
The America First movement was led by patriots at the time, like Charles Lindbergh. And he knew that this was just another European war, and all the Americans didn't really want to get involved in it. It wasn't a war to stop racism or whatever the textbooks like to tell you. The only reason that America got into the war was because they were attacked at Pearl Harbor. Americans at the time, the sentiment was they were quite isolationist. They did not want to get involved. They wanted to build their own nation and not police the world. You got to remember, at the time, America had just somewhat recently came out of the Great Depression. If not, they were just coming out of that. And not too long ago, there was already the First World War where 100,000 Americans died. So,
and then let me see. Hold on. This is a separate separate video. This is by Market Fault Lines, the bankers who funded Adolf. 1 second. Oh man, I got to do that second. I can't do that first. All right, let me go here, here, here. This part's interesting. If you probably already know this part, but let's listen.
Distinguished careers. The banks grew larger. The BIS and Chase operated on a vast institutional scale, but the story of how American banking money reached the Nazi war machine also played out in smaller, more personal, more human scale arrangements. One of the most striking involves a Yale-educated investment banker from Connecticut named Prescott Bush, who would later become a United States senator, whose son George Herbert Walker Bush would become the 41st president of the United States, and whose grandson George Walker Bush would become the 43rd. In the 1920s, Prescott Bush became a partner at Brown Brothers Harriman, a private investment bank that, by its own description, was the largest in the world. His father-in-law, George Herbert Walker, had helped establish an important financial relationship with Fritz Thyssen, the German steel and coal magnate who was, through the 1930s, one of Adolf Hitler's most significant early financiers. Thyssen had personally given millions of marks to the Nazi Party before Hitler's rise to power, and he needed an American banking operation to help him move assets across the Atlantic. The mechanism for doing this was the Union Banking Corporation, a New York investment bank incorporated in 1924, which functioned as a clearinghouse for Thyssen's extensive American financial interests. Prescott Bush was a managing director of Union Banking Corporation. Through it and related entities, Brown Brothers Harriman transferred funds, bonds, gold, coal, oil, and steel between the United States and Germany throughout the 1930s and well into the war period.
And yeah, let me go back. I just thought that was interesting, but let's continue here.
They didn't want to get into all of this. So the pressure campaign began. They used their influence in the media and the Roosevelt administration to push the Japanese war and squeeze Japan to kind of provoke a conflict, knowing that it was the only way to break the American will to stay neutral.
And you guys know that we had broken the cipher or whatever. At least this is something I've read and seen around, that like at least Roosevelt knew that there was an attack coming to Pearl Harbor. And that's why, like, I think a good majority of our newer, more modern ships were all brought out of Pearl Harbor, and just our older, outdated ships. And a lot of servicemen and women were there and allowed to be attacked to then bring us into World War II, much like, you know, wasn't the Lusitania World War One? Was that World War One? I'm pretty sure that was World War One. Yeah, I think so. No, because that's U-boats. No, I think that happened first. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting my dates mixed up.
Then Pearl Harbor happened, and suddenly the America First movement was silenced, and the U.S. was now committed to a war that would ultimately reshape the world in their favor.
Wait.
So then America...
I got to give you a shout out. Where are you? Where? Kindness. I have misophonia too. That's why I try like super hard I don't breathe into the mic. There's other podcasters that I used to like a lot, but they'll like drink and swallow in the mic. Aside from like watching Erica just be brutally painful to watch, she swallows her saliva into the mic and I can hear it and it drives me nuts. Have you, where'd you go? Kindness. You should look up, what's his name? What's that black scientist? He's a really well-known guy. He did a thing on misophonia and how like our brains are wired differently. I don't know if you've looked into that. It's pretty fascinating. Our ability to connect dots and different things that other brains aren't, because we don't naturally tune out white noise like most brains do, and they're able to ignore people's saliva, gum chewing, mouth chewing. I've had it since I was a kid. It's nuts. It drives me nuts sometimes. My heart goes out to you.
Declared war on Japan, and Japan was allies with Germany for the most part, mostly just a paper thing as far as I know. And that forced the U.S. to declare war on Germany, and that's exactly what they needed. So let's fast forward through the war. We're not going to get into all of World War II. Let's go to afterwards. Let's look at what happened after the war. This is the crucial psychological shift.
This is where
after the war, the Americans, the Allies really, and the Jews, they all came together and they started a process called denazification. They were like, hey, how do we make sure that Nazi Germany never happens again? Because this was obviously a very bad time for us. So the Jewish intellectuals then looked at Germany and they studied, why was it so powerful and strong? How did this country turn from basically nothing into an economic superpower in the span of about a decade? So they looked at Germany and they seen that the nation was strong. They seen that it was unified. They seen that it was racially homogenous, and they seen that it was also fiercely nationalist. And they said, hey, this is pretty much the hallmarks of National Socialist politics.
Aside from the other part of what happened over there, the bad part, okay, I would say, right, those four parts we all had in MAGA, America First, and Charlie Kirk, okay? Nationalistic, unified, I forget the other two, but they weren't negative things, right? In and of themselves, they're positive things, especially if we want to become more isolationists in our view on where to focus our time, money, and energy as a country, focus on us. But when you do that, we can't be used and manipulated by Philly and the Zionists, right? And so even if they didn't think that Charlie would ever turn into Adolf or that Trump would ever turn into Adolf, I think allowing this pro-American, make America great, America first, America only, America last movement if they allowed that to continue unabated, eventually I think we would have cut them out naturally. And I think Charlie was well on his way to doing that. And I think that had a lot more to do with him being taken out than anything else. Because if you think about this whole plan since, the last 100 years, and we're now finally getting, for them in their perspective, to the final stage, okay, where they can destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They can rebuild the third temple, which we're going to get to that. There's some weird things about the red heifer that they were breeding in Texas and that they sent over to Philly, and it's in Philly now because they need that to cleanse the grounds in order to after they destroy, or the Al-Aqsa Mosque gets destroyed, then they can rebuild the third temple. And the Chabad organization is like working actively to do that. And think about when this war kicked off, we were being told by the Secretary of War that this was a holy war. They were invoking scripture. And then to the IDF soldiers, they have patches on their uniforms about the third temple. And where do those patches come from? The Chabad organization. This is being made into a holy war, right? A war to end all wars. Even though they haven't said that catchphrase yet, but they do it all the time. Not to mention when he goes through what the process was after World War II and the focus of Iraq and then Syria and then Palestine, Lebanon, and then Iran, that's literally what we've lived through for the last 30 years. And now we're just on Iran finally, okay? And so he spells it out. It's freaking nuts.
So they realized that a nation united by all of this and God was a threat to their existence. This is the analytical, objective look at the German state under Adolf Hitler. So they decided that nationalism itself was the enemy.
Yep.
So they began to push liberalism. The Jewish intellectuals figured that we need to pretty much make sure that nationalism never happens again. We need to make the world more open to everything. And this is how globalization was birthed. They then pushed the idea that nations shouldn't have ethnic identities.
Nope.
There started to be a sudden, very big push for open societies, as they called it. They also started to push secularism, which means pretty much we don't have a religion. We say that we are one, but we're not really it.
Right.
So they figured that if they could atomize the West by basically breaking down the tribes of Europe and
Yes. Where to go? Yes, Jay. Yes, they have the red heifers, but I don't know if they've been sacrificed yet. No, they have not been sacrificed yet. He's going to get to it. They were breeding them, and they spent millions of dollars in Texas, probably Ted Cruz, okay, and other political individuals. I mean, maybe even the Bush family, okay? And they were bred specifically, right? They could never have worked a day in their life. They can't have a certain, they can't have one strand of different color hair. There's all these, it has to be like unblemished, perfect, untainted, and unstained. And they were breeding them. Okay, we're going to get to that. But yes, you got it right. Let's continue.
America into individual consumers, so to say, then no Hitler would ever rise up again against them. This is then how globalism was promoted as a survival mechanism for themselves.
Please.
But then 1948 happened. Israel was then established and given to them by the British Empire. And then suddenly the geopolitical map started to change. Now let's fast forward to the 1950s. In the 1950s and the 60s, and even you could say shortly after Israel was even made, the Arab nations of Egypt and Syria went to war with Israel. But here was the problem. The Arabs started getting backing from the Soviet Union to fight Israel because Israel was getting backing from the United States via weapons. So the idea at the time for the United States to even do this was because they wanted to control the Eurasian sector and they didn't want it to go to Russia, which was the other superpower at the time. Because at the time, Israel was not a global superpower. It was the US versus the Soviet Union. This is the Cold War era.
And remember, JFK was Catholic. Catholics, by definition, are anti-Zionists, right? And he wanted to broker better relations with Russia, right? He wanted to make sure that we did not partner with Philly and alienate Arab countries, right? He did not want them to develop nuclear weapons program. He wanted them to register under FARA, so the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or Foreign Aliens, I don't FAIRA. That's the gist of it. And then he gets assassinated. And then LBJ undoes everything that he was doing. So, I mean,
They figured we need to control both the Soviet Union and the US, figured that they needed to control the Eurasian area where Europe meets Asia and the Middle East, because it was very important for all the minerals and trade routes and just a global foothold on the world for maintaining global dominance. So the Arabs getting weapons and money from the Soviet Union, this confused the Jewish leadership, because for decades, many of them had been leftist, liberal, Marxist sympathizers. They were, after all, the original Bolsheviks. They were the ones pushing leftism in the West so that they could avoid another rise of Hitler. But now the Soviet left was backing the Arabs who wanted to destroy Israel. So what did they do then exactly? Well, they pivoted. A group of Jewish intellectuals in New York, which were mostly former Trotskyites, realized that if they wanted Israel to survive, they couldn't rely on the left anymore, because these were all people supporting the Soviet Union. They needed the American military machine instead to defeat the Soviet Union and Egypt and Syria. So they needed the right wing. So they infiltrated slowly the American conservative movement. They didn't care about limited government. They didn't care about the Constitution. They didn't care about Christian tradition. They cared about one thing, and that's using American military power to crush the Soviet proxies in the Middle East. And still, to this day, we see American military power crushing their enemies in the Middle East today. So, but all the way back then, this was the birth of neoconservatism. Neoconservatism is not inherently American. It is inherently a Zionist creation.
Yep.
It is Trotskyism applied to foreign policy, basically. This is the idea of a permanent revolution, which you can see in my video about neoconservatism explained if you want more of an explanation of that, although we will go over a lot of that as well here. But neoconservatism was, Trotskyism was the idea of a permanent revolution. But instead of spreading communism, they are spreading democracy at the barrel of a gun.
And literally, that's what they tell us every time we invade another place. We are bringing democracy to Iraq. We're bringing democracy to the people of Iran, right? Like, we want to free and liberate, the people of, fill in the country, right? And like, we're doing this extreme good of, bringing democracy to the world. What? No.
Basically, using the American military might. We need to spread democracy throughout the rest of the world, so they call it. And it was specifically in countries that threatened Israel. But before even the neocons fully took over, the special relationship with Israel.
Yeah, for sure. We brought all of them over. Operation Paperclip, turned into Mortal Kombat Ultra. We did some of the worst. We continued all of what the scientists were doing in Germany. We continued all of it here and in Canada, and did even worse and did things to people without, their consent, without informed consent. Horrible things were. And then we brought over, the U2 program with Werner von Braun. Here's one of the things I think is that in a lot of ways, Germany never lost, right? Because if that was never the point, right? If the point was to create this thing that justified then creating a state for Philly, right? And if Adolf and Germany was being funded by and supported by the British Crown and many people, bankers and political individuals in the United States, like the Bush family. And if you've ever seen the documentaries and the research that they've done in finding Adolf, right, but his last name, most likely the body that was found in the bunker wasn't his at all. He never committed unaliving himself, but ended up fleeing to South America. And there's like full-on German Bavarian towns, like fully still there in South America, Argentina, all over. But if he survived and was allowed to live out his days down there, okay, and then if you look at like a lot of the companies that were part of the German war machine are all like major staples in the world today. And a lot of their descendants are still running most of these companies, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes, and others, right? Adidas, that's a German company. Yeah, even like the people that were running FIFA that started it, Germans. And that we brought over on Operation Paperclip, and through the YouTube program, NASA was established, the CIA was established post World War II, during World War II, OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, turned into the CIA. Then we created the NSA, and it's almost like a lot. Yeah, we did the Nuremberg trials and a few show trials. Some people got prosecuted and charged, right, and held accountable, but so many also were brought out and were hidden here in the United States and allowed to become in some of the most powerful positions in our different parts of our government and our military industrial complex and our, government apparatus. So, yeah.
Israel was already showing its dark side. Let's talk about the Lavon affair now. So in 1954, Israeli military intelligence launched a covert operation codenamed Operation Susanna. Their agents planted bombs in American and British libraries and in movie theaters in Egypt. The plan was to detonate these bombs and blame it on the Muslim Brotherhood.
Hold on. Delaney, you don't get on my nerves. And no one has to donate anything. I'm so sorry that you just lost your job after working there for 30 years. No one has to give money. It's awesome that people that can. The best thing everyone can do is to hit the like, hit the subscribe, and then after the video posts, go over to the video and throw a comment in. Those 3 things help the algorithm and help this video reach more people and help the channel continue to grow. Those are the 3 best things, and they're all free that everyone could do. And that's the best, people can do, and totally understand like the time that we live in right now. Even if you had a job, right? Even people that have, like, I have a degree and you're considered low income. I don't know, what is it now? Like $100,000 a year. You're still considered like low or medium income. Gas is upwards of $5 a gallon. We're not even into the summer months really yet, where they're going to jump up even more. All price of food and goods is going up. I totally understand that this is something. What I really want more than anything is people to feel a part of a community, gain support here, know that they're not alone here. Be educated here, edified and supported. Yeah. And know that they have a safe place to come. And the very least everyone can do is just hit the like, hit the subscribe, put a comment under the video once it posts. That's the best everyone can do, Delaney. And so I appreciate you. And no, you don't talk too much, Delaney. Don't worry about it.
And trick the United States and the UK into going to war with Egypt so that they could protect Israel. So just let that sink in for a moment. Our greatest ally was bombing our buildings and risking our lives to trick us into fighting their enemy. It was a classic false flag operation.
Sounds like 9/11.
And they only got caught because one of the bombs detonated prematurely in one of the Israeli agents' pockets. This is how they operate. They view American lives as disposable pawns on their chessboard.
Yep.
Then came the USS Liberty that a lot of people know about. So in 1967,
and Dave Smith and Charlie Kirk both talked about it, and Josh Hammer and Ben Shapiro and other neocons deny what really happened there, even though there's, servicemen that talk about it, that survived it, witnessed it. It's nonsense that people deny what really happened.
During the 6-Day War, Israeli forces intentionally attacked an unarmed American intelligence ship that was also in international waters. They strafed it, they torpedoed it, and they tried to sink the ship and kill every single American sailor on board to prevent them from reporting on the war crimes that the U.S. was seeing. This killed 34 Americans and wounded 171. And what did the U.S. government do about it?
Hold on. I also want to hit this because I agree, TNT, and I don't want anyone to be feeling like we're fear mongering or spreading fear. But more than ever, I do feel people need to be ready. Like your house, you individually should be ready. Like Black Scout Survival talks about this. Like People that can be as physically fit as possible. Okay. Be spiritually fit. Okay. Be mentally fit. Prepare yourself individually and then help prepare your family. Whatever role within your family, whether you're a husband, a mother, a daughter, a brother, a son, a sister, whatever it is, a grandmother, try to prepare yourself, your immediate family, and then if you have extended family as well, start stocking up on things, preparing for things, because part of the Hormuz being shut down, yes, it affects oil right now, but what about all the other byproducts of petroleum that are going to be affected by the slowing down? And we're depleting our reserves right now. And so, what is it? Fertilizer, so food. Supposedly, there's going to be a massive, maybe possibly a massive, like famine and food shortage. Other products and things could become so expensive they'll be very hard to get for average individuals. Nonetheless, just start to prepare yourself as much as you can, whether that's buying a couple things of canned goods, buying MREs, buying rice, and just having some excess water storage for yourself. Just prepare, because it definitely, and what's the worst that could happen is nothing happens and then you have these things. It's not going to go bad. Use it then. But it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. All right. So I agree, TNT.
They just covered it up. They told our sailors to stay silent, and they sold out our own men to protect the reputation of a so-called friend. Basically, the official narrative was that it was covered up because the president at the time, President Lyndon Johnson, he didn't want this already volatile war that already had Soviet Union backing to explode a little bit if the U.S. intentionally and directly joined the war. So he just allowed the attack to pretty much say, oh, it was an accident. It's okay. No ill intentions. He didn't want to create tensions with the Soviet Union, but he shouldn't have let them get away with it.
Yeah.
Now we're still along the 1960s time frame. So let's talk about nukes. It is an open secret in the intelligence community, and specifically regarding the Apollo affair, that Israel stole nuclear materials from the United States from a plant in Pennsylvania, the Numic plant, so that Israel could jumpstart their own nuclear weapons program. So they stole our secrets, they compromised our national security, and they did it while we were giving them billions of dollars in help. One president tried to stop the
JFK
acquisition of nuclear arms and tried to inspect the Jewish state of Israel and all of that, but that president ended up being shot in the head. That was JFK. Kind of suspicious, but anyways, I'm not pointing any fingers. This is YouTube after all. Don't want to get my channel nuked. Now, next, anyways, let's fast forward to the 80s and let's go over the Beirut barracks bombing. So in 1983, 241 American military men were killed.
And this is important because Trump uses this as leverage, as justification to go to Iran. He just said it right before we kicked off this second incursion into Iran. He brings up the Beirut bombing.
Killed in a horrific terror attack. But why even were we there at Beirut in 1983? Well, they were there to serve a regional geopolitical goal that largely benefited Israel. We became the human shields for their regional ambitions, and our military men paid the price. But one has to ask, why even was the U.S. military at Beirut in 1983?
Why?
And this is a great question, and it's the exact question that the establishment hates to answer, because the official answer is that, oh, we were there on a peacekeeping mission. But a peacekeeping mission for who exactly? So to understand why we were there in 1983 and why almost 250 Americans died, let's look at what happened the year before in 1982. So in 1982, Israel had a very big military invasion into Lebanon. This was called Operation Peace for Galilee. So the goal of Israel invading Lebanon in the 80s was to crush the PLO. This was the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was operating in Lebanon.
Yep.
And Israel wanted to install a pro-Israel Christian government in Beirut in Lebanon. So Israel sent its military in their invasion all the way up to the Lebanese capital, completely taking most of Lebanon.
Yep.
Then they heavily destroyed the city, which caused a massive international uproar because of all of these civilian casualties and the sheer destruction. If that sounds familiar to Gaza nowadays, then you get where all this kind of thing started with them. The Israelis essentially got themselves bogged down, though, eventually in a brutal sectarian civil war that they pretty much triggered the escalation of in the first place. So it became a political nightmare for the military as well as a PR thing. So what always happens when Israel gets over its head? They call Washington to come in and clean up the mess. So the Reagan administration stepped in to kind of try to make a ceasefire. As part of that deal, the United States, along with France and Italy, agreed to send troops to form a multinational force. This was the basis of the peacekeeping mission. Because Israel was being brutal to another country, now we had to step in, and eventually the U.S. military soldiers got killed. So the official mission of the U.S. Marines was to oversee the safe evacuation of all of the Lebanese fighters that were in the PLO out of Beirut and to help stabilize the Lebanese government and the Lebanese military so that the Lebanese government could regain control. But here again is where it went all south. We were acting as Israel's janitors because we didn't have a vital national security interest in the Lebanon.
Nope. And he continues to talk about this. Hold on. Let me make sure. I'm going to skip to the next part where it's like modern day.
So once we started dropping massive naval artillery shells on the Muslim factions to protect Israel's favored proxy government, we were now no longer peacekeepers.
Correct.
We were active belligerents in their holy war. So this enraged the Muslims who were being funded and trained by the newly formed Islamic Republic of Iran, because you got to remember, Iran was made in 1979. It's only 1983 now. And they were setting up what would eventually become Hezbollah. All
right, let me skip to the next part. I think it's 37.
It said Israel should completely abandon the Oslo Accords and the concept of land of peace, which terms are. So these names are very crucial to remember.
Hold on.
Right into the neoconservative movement.
Sorry.
To the Reagan era, this is the 80s. We're still in the 80s. This is when the neocons and men like Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl and William Kristol, Robert Kagan and Max Boot fully infected the host, meaning the United States.
Yep.
Like we said earlier, the neoconservatism movement was created because the Jewish people were not going to be leftists, or maybe not the Jewish people, but a lot of them were, specifically and namely the Jewish intellectuals, to combat another rising of Hitler.
Correct.
And then remember, we told you that they had to shift right into the neoconservative movement. So the neoconservatives in the Reagan era, because we have to fight the Soviet Union because we want to protect Israel, then started to take over the think tanks. They took over the State Department and they hollowed out the old right. The old right, which is pretty much what I am nowadays, is mostly isolationist unless it benefits America. They are extremely nationalist and they are right-wing. So they then replaced this, though, and once they infected the conservative movement, and they replaced it with this aggressive interventionist foreign policy. Then in 1996, let's fast forward to the 90s, by the way, the neoconservatives, which was largely a Zionist movement, had a new plan. So a group of these neocons, led by Richard Pearl, wrote a policy paper for the first.
Yep, and it's called A Clean New Break, a strategy for securing the realm. Super interesting, and you guys can look it up on your own time, but here it is. And so we have Richard Pearl, okay, right? There's his face. We have James Colbert, Charles Fairbanks, and then Douglas Feith. Douglas J. Feith. What's interesting is that David Wormser, there's no picture for this guy, right? And he is Middle East advisor to Dick Cheney. Awesome. And then it looks like Miriam Wormser, I think, is his I don't know, family member or wife or something like that. Yeah, but a clean break, a strategy for securing the realm. So let's listen to what, oops, no, I didn't mean to do that. Hopefully that didn't do anything. Dang it. It's a video game. Hopefully it's fine. I don't know. We'll see.
Benjamin Netanyahu government called a clean break, a new strategy for securing the realm. The clean break accords are basically the literal blueprint for the last 25 years of endless wars in the Middle East. Let me explain briefly what this was. As I said already,
that's what I mean. Like he had a video game of people playing the whole time, and it shows like weapons and different stuff. And I accidentally clicked back to play the audio before I pulled it off the screen, and that's what you saw randomly.
This was written for Benjamin Netanyahu. And again, as I said earlier, this was created.
The clean new break, the strategy for the securing the realm, was written by those individuals and written for and to Benjamin Netanyahu.
Created by the Zionist neoconservatives. So obviously this was made to benefit Israel.
Yeah.
So basically this document, this write-up, was designed to be Netanyahu's grand strategic playbook, the way that they would do it, the plans for how Israel could dominate the Middle East heading into the 21st century. As I said, the clean break memo was written by neocons who were a Zionist movement. It was written by Richard Pearl.
Can you guys not hear it? Delaney, what do you mean? What happened, Matt? Can you guys hear? Can you guys give me a thumbs up? Can you guys hear the audio still? Can you hear me? I didn't see. I didn't see it. They all do something for a second. Okay, everything's still good. Yes. Okay. All right. I didn't know what happened to Delaney.
Other prominent authors of this document was Douglas Feith and David Wormser. So these names are very crucial to remember because at the time in 1996, they were acting as U.S. policy advisors to a foreign head of state, which was Benjamin Netanyahu, like we said. But just 5 years later, these exact same men would be appointed to the highest levels of the United States Pentagon and the State Department under George Bush. And what did we do under George Bush? Well, we went to war with Iraq. But Richard Pearl then became the chairman of the Defense Policy Board. Douglas Feith became the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. David Wormser became a Middle East advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney. So what did the document actually propose then? We have to look at this question because you might be like, okay, they wrote the paper for Benjamin Netanyahu, but what did it actually say? This paper pretty much told Netanyahu to make a clean break from the past. It said Israel should completely abandon the Oslo Accords and the concept of land of peace, which is basically giving Palestinians territory in exchange for peace treaties.
Right.
Instead, it advocated for a policy of peace through strength and preemptive war. Preemptive war, does that sound familiar to today? Well, it should. They were calling the strikes in Iran preemptive. Anyways, it stated that Israel needed to reshape its strategic environment by aggressively removing its enemies from power. So the specific hit list in the 1996 document were these countries. I have to specify 1996 because we ended up going to war with every single one of these countries, and this was 10, 20, 30 years before any of this even happened. But the first one was to remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq. The document explicitly stated that removing Saddam Hussein was an essential, I like to not edit my blunders out, was an essential Israeli strategic objective to get rid of Saddam Hussein. Next.
Yeah, literally you're going to hear him go over our Middle East policy for the last, I don't know, since 2001. I mean, he's already covered pre-2001, but when we're talking about why we really got involved in Iraq and toppling and getting rid of Saddam Hussein and then getting rid of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, but also we had to get rid of Gaddafi in Egypt, Libya, and Yeah, I mean, our eyes on Lebanon and Palestine and now Iran, right?
Was to contain and destabilize Syria by using proxy forces in Lebanon and Jordan. And we see that nowadays this has come to fruition because Bashar al-Assad is no longer the leader of Syria. After that was to take down Iran, which is what's happening right now,
Yep.
and completely take it over, get them out of the way, just like Iraq and just like Syria. Even though it doesn't even matter who's in charge of Syria now. Syria, the president of Syria, the leader of them anyways, is some pro-Al-Qaeda guy.
Yep.
It doesn't matter though, because he's able to work with Syria or with Israel, I mean. So
Correct.
they're able to be contained. It doesn't really matter.
Yep.
And then after that was to take Gaza, remove the Palestinians. So the Clean Break Accord, the document argued that if you knock out Iraq, you break the regional balance of power as well as Syria and Iran. So once you take out Iraq, Syria then becomes isolated. Then once you take out Iraq and Syria, Iran is cut off. And once you take out Palestine, now Iran is completely on its own and Israel achieves total regional hegemony. Does everything start to make sense with Iran now in the Middle East?
Yes.
It was never about America or even what these fuck faces say when they're like, oh, it's about attacking China, bruh.
Okay, he only cusses like 3 times. That's one. There's like 2 more. But the information's good.
No, it's not at all. This is solely a war for Israel and the people who are pushing all this propaganda on Twitter. I'll get to them later on in the video. But anyways, that is what the Clean Break memo has put into place. But anyways, here is the big bait and switch. So when Netanyahu read the report in 1996, he was like, awesome, this is great. I totally support it. This is for Israel. But at the time in the 90s, the full scope of the plan, like invading Iraq, was simply too big, or it was too expensive, or it was too deadly for the Israeli military to accomplish by themselves. Israel didn't have the manpower or the money to conquer the Middle East like that in the 90s. So what did the neocons do? They then took off their advisor to Israel hat.
And I think it's pretty interesting. Did you guys hear about possibly what happened in Congress, or what is happening, or they already did it? I'd have to read the news. Like I said, I'm at work all day and I'm doing as much as I can with what little spare time I have, but that they're merging Philly's military and our military. Think about how many ways that could go wrong. It could go wrong in so many ways.
And they put on their American Patriot hats. And they got into the Bush administration in 2001. Then 9/11 happened, and Israel knew that 9/11 was going to happen, but they didn't want to share the information with the U.S. because obviously, if we use 9/11 as a pretext for invading Iraq, that's the perfect justification that we need. And we know this is true because we had the dancing Israelis watching 9/11 as it happened. And we even have interviews at the time of Israelis smiling when 9/11 just happened 20 minutes ago. And then they were saying, well, now you know how Israelis feel. So this was a planned attack. Well, maybe not planned. It was definitely done by some radical Muslims. But here's the thing. People say Israel did 9/11. Well, they didn't actually do 9/11. The U.S. had their eyes on Osama bin Laden. He actually was a radical Muslim terrorist. What the difference here is, though, is that they just allowed it to happen. They didn't do anything to stop it because they...
And I mean, there's certain parts of some of these things I don't necessarily agree, whole cloth on with him. But I mean, the majority is, in my opinion, either very, very close to or near spot on. I think everyone lands maybe a little differently on to what degree was Philly involved in 9/11 and our government and Cheney and Bush and planning. It's the same thing with October 7th and Bibi. Like, did they have foreknowledge? Did they fund, the opposition to carry it out? Did they know and let it happen, or did they carry the whole thing out themselves? I think no option is really a good option. They're all horrible and disgusting.
They wanted it to happen. So did they effectively do 9/11? They didn't necessarily do 9/11. They just allowed it to happen. That's something that I did want to clarify. So anyways, Al-Qaeda, which was, we're going to Osama bin Laden, a group of mostly Saudi Arabian, got to clarify that because Saudi terrorists were, they attacked, they did 9/11. so we need to invade Iraq. Like what's going on here? But anyways, these terrorists that were Saudi and hiding in Afghanistan attacked the United States, but within hours of all these dead Americans and the towers falling, the neocons like Richard Pearl and Feith and Wolfowitz and Dick Cheney and all of them, they started pushing to invade Iraq.
And there's also a paper called what was it, the Plan for a New American Century. That's fascinating too. Condoleezza Rice, and this whole thing seems to have been all of it is a plan that's being played out in different stages, and this was just the next stage of the plan.
So again, why Iraq? Because Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Saddam Hussein actually hated Al-Qaeda. Iraq was not a threat to the United States either. But Iraq was step one of the 1996 clean break memo written for Israel. These neoconservatives took an Israeli security wish list, slapped an American flag on it, and called it the global war on terror. And in doing so, they used the anger and grief of the...
Are you guys saying you disagree with him that that they didn't plan 9/11, right? Is that what you guys are saying? World Trade Center 127 controlled demo. I agree with that. They even said that, and they talked about we're going to pull the building, pull it. That news anchor declared it was down before it fell down, and then it fell down afterwards, and nothing even hit Tower 7, and it completely fell to the ground, perfect on top of itself. You talk about the insurance on World Trade Center, on the complex that what's his name was able to agree that, or he was able to argue that there were two separate attacks, and so he got the same amount for each building. The whole thing, in my opinion, reeks that they were all in on it together. So these neocon, war hawk Zionists, along with, so the American Zionists, but also then the Philadelphian Zionists, seem to have all had a unified goal together, and it benefited them all in different ways. But I think that's how they also participate. You have the CIA, you have Mossad, and they work together. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, blah, 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 blah. It sucks. Larry Silverstein, right? Larry Silverstein.
Innocent American public after 9/11 to justify it, which is really sad because my people, the Americans, we are a kind people, and we are one of a very unique spirit. We come together in times of unity, and the times after 9/11 was the greatest national unity time since World War II. You don't fuck with Americans. When we get together and we want to kick your ass, we're going to do it.
Yeah, don't mess.
So they used our faith and goodwill and our nation created by Christian traditions as a way to go to war with Iraq.
I don't know if you guys know that just before 9/11, was it Larry? It's Silverstein, right? Did I get his last name right? They had just done a inspection of the building, and the building had asbestos in it, and they renovated 2 floors. I think it was 2 floors in one of the buildings, or 2 floors in both of the buildings. And it was millions and millions and millions of dollars. And how many stories was there? Over 100, right? There's the 70th. So it hit on the 70th, right? Around the 70th. So there's at least 100 and something stories, right? It was going to cost more to renovate them, right? And get all the asbestos out than they were worth. So he turned what ended up being, in his mind, a bad investment, right? 110 floors. Thank you. He turned what looked to be a horrible investment, right? Because he had purchased them, and then he found out there's asbestos in all of them, and it was going to cost more than they were worth just to make the asbestos, make it usable and get all the asbestos out. And he turned that into just this perfect opportunity where he could claim the insurance on them and use it to get us involved in the Middle East and the war on terror and the Patriot Act and with Philly. And then he was able to argue that each plane that he hit each building separately was a different attack, and therefore deserved its own payout. Holy smokes. And they gave it to him. And I think this guy just bought the US Bank Tower in LA. Watch out if you live in LA. Watch out if you work near that building. Probably should stay away from it for a while. And then we have, think about this. I think it's 2028. We have the Olympics in LA. I've always had a feeling like the movie 12 Monkeys and I don't know. It's just me, just my brain and the way I work. Cause I used to live in Pasadena too. And I was like, I don't want to be here when the Olympics are here in 28. I just have this feeling. Oh man, I saw that happen. I just have this feeling. Whoa, calm down there, Light. Holy smokes. I didn't say you could get that bright. Jeez, what's happening in here? Chill out. I just have this feeling something might happen in LA when the Olympics are there in 2028. I don't want it to be true. It just seems like something could happen. I don't know. Just a feeling.
To secure Israel's interest really makes me sad. So they used and tricked the American working class, like kids from Ohio and Texas and Idaho and Pennsylvania, into putting on boots and carrying rifles into Baghdad to fulfill a neoconservative geopolitical strategy that was designed for Israel. So the aftermath of this is Pat Buchanan and the America First PaleoCon movement. He was one of the last true America First conservatives of that era, really, too. Yep. He called this out in real time. In 2003, right as the Iraq War was starting, Pat Buchanan wrote, and I quote, "Their plan, which urged Israel to reestablish the principle of preemption."
Where are you, JT? Or hold on. Yeah, I think I'll show it to you. I think he just purchased it. Yep. All right. So, here. Yeah, it says, yes, Larry Silverstein, his company, the Silverstein Properties, purchased the iconic U.S. Bank Tower, 633 West 5th Street in downtown Los Angeles. They acquired the 72-story skyscraper for $430 million in 2020. So he's had it for 6 years. So not super recent, but recent enough. And then put over $60 million into modernizing the tower. Keep in mind, what did they do to the Twin Towers? They just modernized I think it was, they were just doing some maintenance and modernization on the elevators in the Twin Towers prior to them collapsing. They had workers in there. They also had these, I think, Philadelphian art students that had key floors in the areas in which the planes struck, and we're doing these exhibits with all these boxes and things that honestly look like they could have been full of explosives. I don't know. That's been speculated as a possibility. But Larry Silverstein buying the building and then doing $60 million in modernization, renovation, makes, I don't know, it just draws a lot of eyes and a lot of questions for me personally. Watch out.
Has now been imposed by Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, Wormser, and Co. on the United States. There is also another very famous book at the time written by professors John Mershimer and Stephen Walt, which also exposed this in their famous book called The Israel Lobby, which I have put on my recommended book reading list in one of my past videos, books you should read. But anyways, they pointed out that the neocons essentially blurred the lines between American interest and Israeli interest. Sound familiar? Until the two were indistinguishable in Washington.
Yep.
So look at the results of the Iraq War.
Yep.
We spent over $2 trillion. We lost over 4,500 American soldiers. These soldiers were patriots.
And this is the other thing that really, really, pisses me off. I was 16. Yes, 16 in 2001. And I joined in 2005, in August 2005, in the DEP program. I signed up, and then I went to boot camp in December 2005. me and two of my friends, we were supposed to be in the buddy program and all go together. But those buttheads popped on their drug test. And so they ended up getting to go together like 6 months or 8 months later. I went by myself. I was the only one that didn't pop on my drug test to go down to MEPS and then, go into boot camp. But I joined the Marine Corps because of, like, one of the main reasons was because of 9/11. A lot of my friends that were in boot camp with me, or that I knew, whether that be through MCT or through school or my MOS that deployed, a lot of them didn't come back. And then when I got hurt, not in deployment, and then was attached to the Wounded Warrior Battalion, a lot of the guys that were my roommates and things in this rehab unit, this battalion for rehabilitation, were severely wounded servicemen and women from Iraq. And that's another reason why I wanted to play this whole thing, because with what I already knew was false pretenses for what got us over there and what we were doing there. This just highlighted it even more. And hearing his own tone of voice of how he's pissed off about it, I really like this guy. And I, wanted to share this with everyone. So let's continue.
They were under the presumption that their country was attacked and they were going to defend it. My heart goes out to them and their families, truly.
Yep.
We had tens of thousands of more American patriots who are still alive today. Again, my heart goes out to every single one of them. If I could read off their names, I truly would. Tens of thousands of them that were maimed, paralyzed, or at the worst, driven to suicide. We destabilized the entire region, which birthed ISIS and which led to a massive refugee crisis that flooded Europe.
Yep.
America then got poorer, weaker, and more hated. But the clean break objectives were achieved, and Saddam was removed, and Iraq was destroyed as a regional power, and then Syria was plunged into a civil war a decade later. I want to put out again, my heart goes out to the American patriots who served. May they rest in peace. Give out a salute or an 07 in the comments if you hear this for those American patriots who were misguided. May they live on forever.
Same
now,
with you guys.
We're going into modern times. We already kind of are, since we just went over Iraq and Afghanistan in the GWAT. Now, let's go to the MAGA movement today. In 2016, when Trump came down the escalator, I was that guy. I saw Trump and I was like, dude, fuck yeah.
Yes.
It might have been 2015, actually. But he came down there and he was echoing nationalist Pat Buchanan sentiment.
Yep.
I cannot be bought out. You guys, Hillary's donors, they're the ones that are all booing in the crowd. I was like, this is our guy.
This is our guy.
This is what we need.
Yeah.
Holy shit. This is awesome. In 2016, Trump ran against the neocons. He said this was a disastrous war. He even put on Twitter back in 2013, we should have never been in the Middle East.
Yeah, let's take a listen. Let's do a throwback to old Donald. All right. Let's hear Donald in his own words. Okay. This is in South Carolina, 2016. Let's give him a big thumbs down. Make sure it's on the screen. Get ready for this.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake. All right. Now, you can take it any way you want. And it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5.
Okay, so all the neocons and all of the pro-Zionists and warmongering, establishment was against him. And either this was all a freaking act, okay, and he was conning us the whole time, or something's happened between then and now.
5 days he went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say. And he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass
Okay,
destruction.
all right. Governor Bush.
Yep. Just remember.
What a waste of time. Trump ran on America first. Truly, I was so supportive of that. And he utterly betrayed all of us when he got back into power, even before that. The run up to the 2024 election, that is when shit went sideways.
Yep.
But anyways, look at who surrounds Trump now.
Yep.
Look at his policies. The movement has been hijacked. The MAGA movement, the America First movement, it's been hijacked. It has been flooded with the same neocon ideology, just wearing a red hat. Trump has now become the most pro-Israel president, and I would argue in history. Let me reiterate just how much Trump was not like this when he first got into politics. He stood on the debate stage and in the heart of Bush country in South Carolina, and he looked the Republican establishment right in the eye, and he told them the Iraq war was a fat, ugly lie. He said we spent trillions of dollars in the Middle East while our own roads and bridges were crumbling. He said he wanted to get along with Russia. He said we needed to stop policing the world and secure our own border. We need to build a wall. Like I said, for the first time since Pat Buchanan in the 90s, the dissident right, the nationalists, the paleocons, the paleoconservatives is what that means. The forgotten working class, we all thought we finally had our champion, our knight in shining armor. But the Zionist lobby and the neoconservatives, they're not stupid. They are a parasitic entity that has survived for decades, learning how to jump from host to host. When they realized they couldn't defeat the populist energy of the MAGA movement from the outside, they decided to hijack it from the inside. Basically, just following the old quote, if you can't beat them, then join them. So when Trump won, he had a massive problem. He didn't have his own nationalist elite to staff a government. If you remember back then, a lot of his own personnel were backstabbing him and whatnot. And even in the 2024 run-up, all the people were saying Trump's biggest issue in his first term was not having his own cabinet full of Trump loyalists. Trump also had no think tanks. He had no farm team to basically get. He didn't have loyalists, like I said. So he outsourced his transition team to the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, and the establishment GOP. And who did he get out of that? He got the swamp. He got the neocons. He got the establishment GOP.
Thank you. We're not done. I just want to take a moment real quick. For those of you that have already done so, thank you so much. If those of you that haven't done so, can you please do me a favor and hit the like and the subscribe? It is the best way to help support this channel. All right, let's continue.
GOP. So instead of an America First nationalist government, Trump was surrounded by people like Jared Kushner, who is a lifelong liberal Zionist with deep family and financial ties to Bibi Netanyahu. He also brought in Mike Pompeo, who is a rabid Christian Zionist who fell for the Schofield Bible bullshit, who believes in the, like I said, Schofield rapture theology. He then brought in Nikki Haley, who is the ultimate darling of the military-industrial complex. By the way, her name is like Nemrata or something. She's Indian. Don't let it fool you. And eventually, anyways, he even brought in John Bolton, who was the literal architect of the Iraq war.
Yes, he was.
So the neocons didn't exactly lose in 2016. They just changed their strategy. They walked right in through the front door of the Trump White House wearing red MAGA hats. If you can't beat them, then join them, like I said. So one of Trump's biggest populist promises was to de-escalate tensions with Vladimir Putin and Russia. I still think we should do this nowadays as well. But anyways, he recognized that pushing Russia into the arms of China was going to be a long-term geopolitical disaster for America, which is what we see nowadays. But the neocons in the deep state could not allow that. A peaceful relationship with a Christian nationalist Russia would go against everything the globalist system ever wanted. Remember, the neocons started off as liberals. So what did they do? They fabricated Russiagate. The intelligence agencies working with the media then took the Trump administration and they gave them all these charges of a fake collusion investigation. If you guys can remember the whole Russiagate thing, they talked about it for 4 years straight and nobody really even knew what the fuck they were talking about.
I think
then they boxed him in. They made it appear so that if Trump tried to make peace with Russia, the media would then scream out, see, he's Putin's puppet. He's Putin's puppet. So, to prove he wasn't a Russian asset, the neocons inside his administration convinced him to take a harder line on Russia than even Obama ever did. So, he got rid of all of the Russian diplomats and he sanctioned their energy sector. And most fatally, he began sending lethal military aid in the form of Javelin missiles to Ukraine.
Yep.
A lot of this anti-Russia stuff did start under Obama with the 2014 uprising in Ukraine, but it was exemplified even more under Trump.
Yep.
So the neocons used a domestic policy hoax, it wasn't real, it never happened, to force an America First president to lay the groundwork for the proxy war in Eastern Europe that we see today, which is the Ukraine war. But you may say, well, Jimmy, what does that have to do with Israel? Now, let's get into that. Where did the neocon Zionist takeover of MAGA become the most obvious? Well, that answer is the Middle East. First, we have to start with the Iran nuclear deal. Trump campaigned on ripping up bad deals and all of that and making America great again. But the Iran
TNT, is that because of what is that, Agenda 2030? So they're like, there will be no holidays starting in year 2030. In fact, there will be no humans, just us rich elite and our robots and the AI.
Iran deal was keeping Iran's nuclear program contained without requiring U.S. military intervention. When Obama signed this, it really pissed off Israel because it was able to empower Iran to keep Israel in check with their nuclear program, basically. So why exactly did Trump get rid of it in 2018? He didn't do it for the factory worker in America. He did it because Sheldon Adelson, the billionaire mega donor to the GOP, demanded it. He did it because Benjamin Netanyahu went on TV and demanded it as well.
Better do it.
So by tearing up the deal, the U.S. isolated itself from its European allies and pushed Iran to restart its uranium enrichment. And it put the United States on kind of a direct collision course for a war with Iran, which is exactly what the 1992 Clean Break Accords called for from those neocons in the beginning.
Yep.
The neocons just simply took over the MAGA movement. Then after that, Trump moved the embassy, the U.S. embassy, to Jerusalem. And for decades, the U.S. embassy was refused by the government, the U.S. government.
Yeah, and think about, all right, so this is going to get into modern day, like what's going on right now. So buckle up.
To be moved to Jerusalem because they knew it would unnecessarily anger the entire Arab world and make America a target for terrorism, all for zero strategic gain.
Yeah.
But
Stupid.
Trump did it anyways, and it's, why, you may ask. This doesn't really make sense. But he admitted it himself at a rally. We moved the capital to Jerusalem. That was for the evangelicals. So essentially, he sold out the American geopolitical neutrality to pander to the Schofield Bible Christian Zionist. And
which is something. So Charlie was there. Let's see. Oh, Delaney, you didn't have to do that. Thank you, Matt. Bless your family. Thank you, Delaney. I appreciate you. You're a blessing. Awesome. This is the part that's hard for me. I guess we could say it's because of everything that happened after Charlie's assassination that we've all become so much more awake to Philly, everything. But as an autodidact, I guess like you only read things, there's confirmation bias, and then the people around you are what kind of tell you what to look into, what to read. You have your own interests as well. But if you think certain things are off limits and fringe and crazy and conspiracy, maybe he wouldn't look into those. Did any of you know about the Schofield Bible issues and who funded it and why and the outcome from the Schofield Bible, little notes at the bottom and how that really pushed this whole dispensationalism? He was dispensationalist. Charlie was. Yeah, I don't know. This is the one thing that's hard for me to understand about Charlie and like where he fell on it, why, and was he waking up to it all? Because he still was pretty pro-Philly in some of his appearances over the last year. Not all, but some, like at the campus events in earlier 25, he still held the line in some of them.
In the donor class Remember, the Schofield Bible was created by a Zionist. His name was Meyer Amschel Rothschild. Next, after that, let's go to the Abraham Accords in the Golan Heights. This is another reason or another factor on how the MAGA movement was captured by the neoconservative movement. So Jared Kushner spearheaded the Abraham Accords, which the media praised as a peace deal. But what it really was a massive arms sale bribe. Basically, the U.S. agreed to sell advanced weapons to Arab states so they would normalize relations with Israel. We then effectively bought Israel's security using American leverage and American technology. Trump also officially recognized Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights, which violated international law, just to give Netanyahu a political boost before an Israeli election. So in 4 years, the America...
You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And he was already being investigated at the time, and probably without that, maybe wouldn't have gotten that extra bump in the polls and elected.
First movement was completely repurposed into an Israel First administration.
100%.
So you may ask, how did we get all of these politicians and even the populist ones to fall in line so perfectly with the Israel First agenda?
How?
Why is there a uniparty when it comes to Israel? It's not just AIPAC donor money. It is blackmail.
Yes.
Then we get into Jeffrey Epstein.
Einstein.
The media tried to sell you the lie that Epstein was just a rogue billionaire pervert.
Einstein.
But Epstein wasn't just a billionaire. He was an intelligence asset for Mossad. For an example, just look at Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father was Robert Maxwell, a billionaire media mogul who was widely known to be a high-level asset for the Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence, as I've said earlier. Well, actually, I don't know if I said that earlier. But if I didn't, Mossad is basically America's version of the CIA and the FBI combined. They are the intelligence agency, one of the best in the world now due to U.S. backing mainly. By the way, Robert Maxwell was given a state funeral in Israel attended by Benjamin Netanyahu himself. The Epstein operation was just a classic intelligence honeypot. The goal was to lure the most powerful men in the world, like politicians and scientists and billionaires. And
why do you think they had? Have you guys seen the painting of Bill Clinton in a freaking blue dress, like literally in the Monica Lewinsky dress, wearing high heels? Well, maybe not the Monica Lewinsky dress, but like I guess it's probably a play on that. And if you guys know any history, like it's said to be believed that like Monica was an asset of the Mossad and was used to get Clinton, Bill, to do what they wanted him to do. Like, yes, we have this. We can either let a lot more out, or you better behave, or we'll just let out a little bit. And then he called their bluff, and they let out a little bit, and then he's like, "All right, I'll play ball. Fine, I'll play ball." Oh, was he wearing red shoes? I don't want to get my channel nuked. Let's see. Let's see. Do you think I'd be allowed to show the painting? Yeah, he is wearing red shoes. Holy smokes. I wonder. Do you guys think my channel will get nuked if I share it? Wait, yes doesn't help me. Yes, my channel will get nuked if I share it. Like, yes, I should share it, or no, I shouldn't share it. Show us. Okay, Julia, but if my channel is going to get nuked for showing us, like maybe I shouldn't do it. You're not helping me. You're just saying yes or no. You got to give me context. Yes, the red shoes. Red shoes. Yes. Okay. Should I show the picture? No, don't. Got it. Okay. All right. I totally believe that. Yeah. But you could Google it. It comes right up. Anyone know about the Red Shoe Club in Hollywood? I want it, but don't do it. Okay. Negative. All right. You still didn't give me context. Negative. Affirmative. Positive. But if you Google it, it comes up. All right.
Royalty to an island so that they could get blackmail on them for sexual deviancy.
Yeah.
Now, let me get into the shills and bots that I said I would get to earlier. If you try to point out all of this online, specifically on Twitter and stuff, you get swarmed. They have armies of paid shills, bots, and influencers whose entire job is to police the MAGA movement and ensure that it stays 100% loyal to Zionism.
It is ugly.
Prime examples of this on Twitter are cat turd, captive dreamer, and misfit patriot. They will call you a rhino or a leftist or a third worlder if you question why we are sending billions of dollars to Israel while our border is still open and we still need to do mass deportations and we're not getting them. It is a coordinated psychological
So it was supposed to be the Lewinsky dress. Okay. All right.
operation to keep the American right on a leash. So why does this detail matter exactly? Because it shows you that the prophecy, so-called prophecy, of Schofield's Bible was actually a top-down geopolitical project. By promoting Schofield's theology, the fake theology, they created a spiritual infrastructure that forces millions of American Christians to defend the financial and geopolitical interests of a foreign power.
Philly.
But look at where that prophecy leads. It leads to the third temple.
Here we go.
I've seen Tucker talking about this like a week ago.
All right. So now we're on the third temple. All right. So let's go here. All right. This is the Chabad org, right? Why on earth do we need a third temple? Healing the world becomes a more attractive idea every year. Same with Jewish unity and the de-scattering of the Jewish people. That means people from the diaspora coming back to Philly, right? But this idea of a third temple in Jerusalem on the other side of the Western Wall, well, yeah, they say that now, but I don't think that's where it would go. I think it can only go in one place, and it's where the Alaskamas is, and they have to take that down first. Why must that be part of the equation? On the contrary, outwardly, it doesn't seem like a good plan for peace, especially considering the location, right? But then here it's talking about the Mashiach 101, Philly, Hebrew, introduction to, Jews and Judaism. And it's all here, right? Yet construction of the third temple is not just another element of the ingathering of the exiles. All right, dude, let's go back here. Let's continue here.
And I was pleasantly surprised because Tucker ultimately is a Fed. He has connections with the Feds, but on this account, he was actually right about this. So to the average American Christian, the third temple is just a Sunday school story. But to the hardline Zionist leadership, it is actually a geopolitical endgame. They believe that the rebuilding of the third temple in Jerusalem is the triggering event for the Messianic age.
Yep.
Now, let's go over Jewish theology real quick. So, to a religious Jew, the Temple Mount is the center of the universe. It is the site where Abraham bound Isaac. It is the site of the Holy of Holies, the holiest place ever. It is the earthly dwelling place of the divine presence to them. So the first temple, which was Solomon's temple, was destroyed by the Babylonians. The second temple was destroyed by the Romans under Titus, which we talked about near the beginning of the video. So since 70 AD, the Jewish people have been in exile, which is the diaspora, without a temple, without a priesthood, and without the ability to perform the biblical animal sacrifices that are required. So since all of that, the Orthodox Jewish prayer has revolved around the mourning of the temple and the plea for its restoration. So when Theodore Herzl founded modern political Zionism, the movement was overwhelmingly secular, the Zionist movement, I mean.
And in the beginning, I don't know if I got through all of these because I lost the connection and the audio. So let me just go here. These were just some of the images that here's the Arch of Titus. All right. So this is the sacking of Jerusalem and the second temple from Rome. And when they brought the Arch of, obviously this is AI generated imagery just to give you a picture of what happened. And then, so this is the actual Arch of Titus and it's in Rome, right? Actually, and I have pictures of me underneath this arch when I went to Rome. I stayed, where did I stay? I'll have to look it up. But I stayed in hostels because I went by myself with friends. But here's the menorah. This is an actual etching that's in the wall, like in the architecture in Rome, which depict them bringing like the bread of, I forget what he called it, Chauvin, the menorah, the silver trumpets, everything that was inside the temple and the Holy of Holies that was looted and brought back, including the Arch of Titus. And yeah. And it's said to believe that it's still underneath the Vatican in some of their vaults to this day. So, yeah. Let me go back here.
Herzl in the early Zionist, like David Ben-Gurion, didn't care about building a temple.
Nope.
Back then, the Zionist movement was mostly secular socialists who wanted a safe political haven for the Jews.
Yeah.
They were just using the historical connection to the land to justify a modern nation
Correct.
state. But
what do we got? Julia. Oh, what do the black hearts mean? Are those not good hearts? Are black hearts good? Are black hearts better? And is there significance on 3? Did you try to type something and it didn't let you? Thank you, Julia, by the way, for your support and donation. I appreciate you. I'm being a little funny, obviously, with the black hearts. I just didn't know. Oh, wait, on your little image, your little icon, you have black hearts on your ankles. Do you have black heart tattoos in real life on your ankles, or is this something else that you picked? I just noticed that though. Let's see. Did someone answer? Dulcinea did the 3 black hearts too. Black line brief. Oh, like black line brief, black hearts. Is that why? It's for you, Matt. Okay. Okay. I'm stupid sometimes. I'm sorry. When I was a kid, I was blonde. Oh, you guys want to see a picture of me when I was a kid? Let's see. Hold on. Yes. Can you bring me the photo of me as a kid from the fridge? Please. Please. All right. What I was going to prove to you, I'm blonde. So I have my blonde moments. Okay. I promise. I did not know her printer is out of color cartridges. You guys are funny. It's sequence of 3s are lucky. CK out Nikola, or check out Nikola Tesla. Yeah, 369. Yeah. Yep. I know Nikola Tesla. I know he was all about 3s. Yep. 100%. I lost my sister to unaliving, devastating way to lose someone. Yep. I lost one of my best friends in my freshman year to that. Black hearts, like black line brief. That's how we roll here. Jay, got you. That's what they said. I didn't catch it. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Punish me. Send me on timeout. All right. Ugh. All right, let me continue.
something changed fundamentally in 1967 during the Six-Day War, which we talked about with the USS Liberty. So when Israeli military went and captured the old city of Jerusalem and reached the Western Wall, which is the retained...
You guys, I'm sorry. I can't pay attention to the live chat when I'm doing stuff. I have seen Black Hearts, but I've never asked you. And this, like, just so you know, I never had social media. Like, I had Facebook, but I didn't use it for social media. I like watch Charlie Kirk on it, and I would like post photos or communicate with my mom. I never had a Twitter or an X until I started this channel. I had my personal YouTube channel, never posted anything. It was just for consuming content. So like, I didn't know if there was like another thing, like an online thing that behind the Black Hearts and stuff. Like, sorry, like I said, me stupid sometimes.
Wall of the Temple Mount, which is where they make all the politicians kiss the wall. A massive psychological and theological shockwave went through the Jewish world. The Zionist secular project then took on a new meaning. So the religious Zionists then began to view the secular state of Israel not just as a political entity like Theodore Herzl envisioned it to be, but as a Jewish ethno-state. They believed that God was using the secular state and even its secular army to conquer the biblical land of Israel as the first step in the messianic process to restore the third temple. And the final step of that process is, like I said, rebuilding it. Now, here is where this all becomes a geopolitical nightmare, because the exact location where the first and second temple stood is currently occupied by the Muslims right now. It is the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, specifically the Dome of the Rock, as they call it. This site has been under control of the Muslims for a very long time now. I think it's around 1,300 or 1,400 years. It is the third holiest site in Islam and is the site of some Muhammad's adventures, so to say. I'm not too well read on Muslim theology, but it's big with Muhammad is what I'm going to tell you. So to build the third temple, the Islamic shrines must be removed according to the Jews. So it must be destroyed. So for decades after 1967, the Israeli government maintained a delicate status quo. They allowed the Jordanian Muslims to administer the site.
Hold on. Yep. Let me go here. Right. So for those of you, here's the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Right. It's pretty. Yeah. All right. Let's continue here.
And make sure of it, take care of it, stuff like that. And the Israeli police forbade Jews from praying there so that, there was not another war igniting in the region just for something like that. So this is the rise of the Third Temple movement with the Schofield Bible and the evangelicals and the Christian Zionist movement. Now that the Zionist movement is a lot more powerful, the most powerful it's ever been in history, they are not treating the temple as a distant prophecy that one day will be achieved. They are actually treating it as an immediate construction project that is awaiting the political green light. So according to Jewish law, before the temple, the third temple, can be rebuilt and the priesthood can be reinstated and all of that, the site and the priest must be purified from the impurity of the dead, as they call it. This brings us into the red heifer, which is a red cow with no white or black.
Red heifer. All right. So let me read this. In September 2022, 5 prized, unblemished red heifers were flown from a Texas ranch to Philly, bred to meet the strict biblical requirements of the Book of Numbers. Their ashes are believed by religious groups to be an essential prerequisite for ritual purification required to rebuild the third temple. Biblical criteria. According to Jewish law, the ashes of a completely red, unblemished cow, one that has never borne a yoke, so never worked, a yoke being the thing put on the cow's back to, till the ground and tow things and work. So an unblemished, unyoked cow are required to purify priests so they can serve in the temple. The Texas connection, the cows were sourced from Christian breeders in Texas in a joint effort involving organizations like the Temple Institute and Bonai Philly. Current status. After arriving in Philly, the heifers were initially kept in quarantine, then moved to the ancient site of Shiloh. And yeah, the presence of these heifers is highly controversial. They have generated intense prophetic excitement among some Jewish and Christian groups, but have also sparked severe political and regional tensions as the prospect of a rebuilt temple on the Temple Mount threatens major Islamic holy sites like the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. All right, let's continue.
Black hairs that has never been yoked or worked. So for 2,000 years, they didn't have one. But recently, American Christian Zionists who believe the third temple must be rebuilt to trigger the second coming of Christ and their fake dispensationalist ideology spent millions of dollars to breed and transport several genetically perfect cows from Texas to Israel.
Yep.
Yes, seriously. They are currently being guarded in secure facilities, waiting until they reach the proper age for the animal sacrifice. So this brings us to October 7th, 2023, that attack on Israel by Hamas. Hamas specifically named the operation the Al-Aqsa Flood. And that is because they were watching the Temple Mount activist. The Arab world sees these red heifers, these cows, red heifers, whatever. I'm probably saying it wrong.
Good, so
I read more than I...
It's okay. Not everyone can. Let's see. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Can you see? Let's see. How bad is it? See, I lived in San Diego. This is a Chargers jersey but I had blonde hair. Yep, that's me. So, all right, continue. Just wanted to prove you this. I have my moments. All right, give me a break.
Pronounce. Forgive me on that, okay?
We
At
forgive
least
you.
I know the information. But anyways, they see the ministers marching on the mount and all of this third temple shit, and they know what this means. The destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque is moving from theory to reality. So what this means basically is that there will be a global holy war. And who do they expect to fight that war for them? You, the Americans. They expect the American military to be the bulldozer that clears the path for their ideology. So now look at the language they use to justify the current wars. Benjamin Netanyahu explicitly called the Palestinians Amalek when he wanted.
Sorry, I didn't mean to distract because this is an important part. Me too, Matt. Me too. Yeah. I told you I get red as a tomato when I laugh or I work out. Literally, I was watching my face change colors like a mood ring. My face is a mood ring. And when San Diego, yeah, supercharges, charge. So that was when I was really young. I ended up being a San Francisco 49er fan because obviously 1994, 95, 90s, Steve Young, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, right? Anyway, and my grandma lived in Vacaville, Bakersfield, and she would buy stuff, and that's the gear that I ended up getting. One year when San Francisco 49ers played, I think it was the Chargers. One year. Anyways, I got my head shaved, and I remember my mom took me to her hairdresser in, I think it's the Escondido Mall. I think it was the Escondido Mall. And I had, the San Francisco design shaved into my head and painted red and gold. Oh, the 90s. What can I say?
To fight all of them and clear up Gaza. You need to understand the weight of that word. In the Torah, the command regarding Amalek was to blot out the memory of them.
Yep.
In other words, this is a command for total genocide.
It is.
This is the book that the Jewish people believe. This is what they read to this day alongside the Talmud. So when the leader of a nuclear armed state invokes Amalek, he is telling you that the enemy is not human. They are a cosmic evil and they have to be completely destroyed.
Yep.
This is the theology of total spiritual and political hegemony. And this is the trap for the American Christian Zionist. So the Schofield-influenced evangelical looks at the Third Temple and they say, yes, we must help them build it so Jesus can return. They then send their money, they send their red cows, and they elect politicians who blindly support Israel militarily. But the religious Zionists look at the American evangelical as a useful idiot. The Zionist does not believe Jesus is returning. I think
it was called the North County Fair Mall in Escondido, right? Kindness? The North County Fair Mall. We are the MLX, according to them. Yeah. I think anyone that's non, Philadelphian. Yeah. Hold on.
he's burning in hell forever. The Zionist believes that when their Messiah arrives, Christianity will be eradicated as a false religion, and the Christians will either be subservient to the Noahide laws or they will be destroyed. This is why the whole pagan thing that's going on, or when people attack me for it, I think that they're extremely misguided. They don't know their history. So hopefully a lot of that just explains it to you. The Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, they have been beefing with Israel for a very long time. Anyways, the drive for the third.
And think about that, right? If Charlie was leaving Protestantism, if he was converting to Catholicism, oh my gosh, that gum is way too spicy. Holy smokes. Sorry. Cinnamon. If Charlie was leaving Protestantism, if he woke up to the Schofield propaganda, leaving Philly, and I believe that he was at least possibly converting to Catholicism. He wasn't just interested in the beauty and the architecture. the guy, something Epps or whatever from Catholics for Catholics. So that guy's going to lie about it. I don't know. And Zach, I don't think they're going to lie. And Candace, I don't think they're going to lie. But say he's leaving Protestantism. He's abandoning the pro-Philadelphian cause. I think he's waking up to this whole thing. That's my opinion. And there's no way they're going to let him go. It's not spicy, but like cinnamon. Like it was just really, there's too much.
Temple is the single most explosive detonator for a massive war on the planet. So if the hardline Zionists and the Israeli government decide to trigger that construction of their third temple, perhaps during the regional war, like right now with Iran, and using the chaos as cover to destroy the Dome of the Rock at Al-Aqsa,
Yep.
It will ignite a war within the whole entire Islamic world.
Yep.
And because the Zionist lobby has completely captured Washington, D.C., and because the Christians
100%. And now if they merge the Philadelphian military and ours, can you imagine if they deploy some of our guys and gals to be embedded with them in Philly and one of them gets unalived? That would be considered an act of war on the U.S. All right. Or if we merge and then they declare martial law here, what if some of the Philadelphian soldiers are used here when they declare martial law? Those are just two random possibilities that popped into my head right now of ways this could go wrong. Right. And I'm sure there's even more. Who led CK to be interested in Catholicism, not EK? I don't know. That's a good question. Well, I mean, Candace, converting to Catholicism. I mean, Erica was a cradle Catholic. So was Andrew Colvett. If he was sick and tired of Rob McCoy, Frank Turek, these Calvary Chapel mocking pastor TPUSA faith infiltrators, freaking what's his name? Victor Marx, which is interesting. I was listening to another documentary about, have you guys heard of like the Collins elite? Is that something you guys are interested in learning about? Have you guys heard of the Collins elite? Lewinsky sounds Polish. Maybe. But I mean, there was a lot of Ashkenazi Jews in Poland, remember? So Vance is a newish Catholic. Yeah, that too. And he was close with him. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I don't know, man. So what? How if JD is actually a Catholic, how is he going to continue this pro-Philadelphian Middle East policy if he's elected as president? Like it's like contrary to their belief. Like he'd have to be a good Catholic, right? Like what the heck would happen there?
Zionists have paralyzed the American right. The United States military will be expected to fight that war.
Yes, it would.
American boys from our precious country will be sent to die in the sands of the Middle East, not to protect American borders, not for mass deportations, not to make our economy better, not to protect American interests, but to act as the guard for a theological project that just views them as expendable.
Yep.
So the Third Temple is not just a building, it is a physical manifestation of an ideology that requires subjugating the West and the countries of it, and the ignition of a global holy war to achieve its destiny. Now, to wrap all of this up, and the hardest pill to swallow, and what some people just will not be able to comprehend, but in their eyes, the United States is actually a far greater long-term threat to them than Iran ever could be.
To Philly.
And the reason for that is because a strong, independent Christian America in a perfect world is the only thing standing in the way of total global hegemony.
Yep.
The goal was always to use the United States as a host and to suck it dry of its wealth and military power and then destroy it. They know that they are on a clock. They know that the people are waking up. So if they lose control of America before they are ready, it will be their biggest downfall. That is why they are accelerating so hard for war in Iran right now.
And now we're there.
Israel's mission is not to be a vulnerable little democracy in the desert. No, no, no.
No, no, no.
Their mission is to become the world's central hub.
Get rid of
The
us.
Eurasian continent is very important to geopolitics.
And getting us to not fulfill on our agreements with the Arab countries to defend them from an attack. Now they're like, and we can't keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Like, what are we doing over there? And now Philly's going to replace us. And yeah, we're not going back. Like, we've lost the Middle East, the U.S., which we never should have been there in the first place. But it's playing into their hands, not ours.
Or they want to be the next great superpower as they prepare for the return of their Messiah, who, let's be honest, fits the Christian description of the Antichrist.
Yes.
They cannot welcome this false Messiah while depending on the West for life support. They require complete dominance, and to rise, America must fall.
Yep. And I actually think Bibi is a narcissistic, megalomaniac, sociopathic psycho that probably fancies himself as a possible candidate for the Jewish Messiah. And, you know, if he can take down Rome, you know, and he was like, the reason why the Golan Heights was, you know, done with Trump, and the moving of the embassy and the rebuilding of the temple. And then all he's got to do now is take down Rome and get back all those, you know, treasures that were plundered out of the Second Temple and use them. And now they got the red heifers there. They got to get rid of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and then rebuild it. And like, dun, da, 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 Bibi is, in my opinion, the Antichrist. But to them, he'd be the Mashiach. I don't know, man. Obviously, it's how many times have people called people the possible Antichrist? But
so look around you. America is already imploding. We are collapsing from decadence and cultural decline and a total loss of identity. Around 60% of Americans are struggling just to pay the rent.
Yep.
AI is replacing the white collar class people.
Yep.
Our major cities look like the third world, and homelessness is rampant. Drugs are everywhere, and child trafficking continues to happen unchecked.
Yep.
That is the goal. They have spent decades using Hollywood to program us for this exact moment.
Yeah, and then he talks about a couple other things just regarding, like, I don't know if you guys had seen that movie, the 2024 movie Civil War. Super horrible movie, but it's almost like predictive programming for us of what's coming next. Just remember, his channel is called Jimmy Talks, and the Forbidden History of Zionism is the audio that we listen to. We made it through 2 hours and 47 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe. I appreciate it. And let's see if there's anything that I had missed. Delaney. Wait, was this to me? Is someone else a martial arts coach? Or you mean me? I do coach and teach jujitsu, and my kids, my girls, I appreciate it. I don't know if that was to me or not, though, so I don't want to say I appreciate it if that wasn't about me. Everything's not about me, I swear. I don't think that way. That I heard an interesting theory that whoever Trump names as successor to the Board of Peace. Interesting. What is the Board of Peace? The Board of Peace. The Board of Peace is an international coordination and stabilization body launched by the U.S. government to oversee ceasefires, manage reconstruction, and facilitate governance in conflict zones. Origins and initial mission, Gaza reconstruction. Oh, I guess you know what? Jared Kushner could be the Antichrist too, you guys. UN endorsement. Chairman. Right now, U.S. President Donald Trump serves as the inaugural chairman, with indefinite centralized authority over the board's decisions. What? The executive board, the founding committee, includes key U.S. officials and political figures such as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. Oh, it's the dream team. Membership and funding. Membership is by invitation only. Permanent status generally requires a financial commitment of up to $1 billion to help fund regional rebuilding efforts. Membership is by invitation only. Permanent status generally requires a financial commitment of up to $1 billion. Freaking evil people, man. Wow. Broader scope and global role. While the immediate operational focus has been on post-war Gaza and overseeing the Palestinian technocratic government there, the charter leaves room for the organization to tackle conflicts globally. Great. The goal is to act as a more nimble alternative to the traditional UN-led collective action, because UN is dead. You know, the UN's never done anything meaningful. Although its overarching structure and relationship to the United Nations have sparked debate among international diplomats. Holy smokes. Great. And Trump is the emperor. Holy smokes, the emperor has no clothes, ladies and gentlemen. What world are we living in? The upside down world. Hey, Matt, check your email. All right, hold on. Shmeemail. Huh. I mean, that's blurry. That first one's pretty blurry, but I do see something. It looks like something could be there. I don't know what I'm looking at there. What are we looking at? What the heck? Yeah, the royal family be crazy, y'all. The royal family be nuts for sure. All right, I'll look at it more when I'm not online, and then I'll respond to you. Thank you for sending me stuff, Delaney. I appreciate you. That's already really interesting stuff. The dress and everything. What's Diana's oldest son's name? Princess Di. What's the older guy? Not Henry, not Harry. The old one, Prince William. Is it Prince William? What's his wife's name? Kate. The vampire dress, super interesting. What's moving? Oh my freaking gosh, I'm moving. What do you mean? Yeah, the movie Disclosure comes out June 16th. Disclosure Day, or Day of Disclosure. Yeah, I'm watching that. That's for sure. Let's see. All right, if you guys haven't done so already, hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you want to donate and support to this channel but don't want to give to YouTube, please donate or support me here at this Venmo for the Black Line Brief. Okay, you just screenshot that and click on the link, the QR code, or you can do it here at Buy Me a Coffee / the Black Line Brief. Just make sure when you do so and you donate or support, you just write a memo or a note on what you would like your money to go to, and I make sure that it does. So, having said all that, thank you all so much for tuning in today and making it through this, what is basically a history lesson, and largely wasn't exciting stuff, but very informative. And I appreciate all of you for sticking through to the end. God bless you. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great night. God bless. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye.